Chapter 845. Although they didn't believe that Zhang Mubai, as the Holy Emperor, would do such a despicable thing, they still had to guard against it. But now that they saw it happen, the 7 of them were enraged. Zhang Mubai, you've overestimated yourself. The 7 of them got up at the same time and rushed out of their rooms, only to see an agile black silhouette. The silhouette seemed to be carrying something in its hand, but it had already leapt out of the back window of Jun Moxie's room. With a flutter, the silhouette had already leapt onto the wall that was 7 to 8 feet away. It was still soundless, but all his movements were seen by the 7 of them. The silhouette was tall, and his every movement exuded an air of elegance and confidence. This was Zhang Mubai's signature move. With a loud bang, a Saint Emperor rushed out of Jun Mosie's room. Before he even appeared, he shouted, "Boss Chow, it's bad he's gone. Brother Zhang, are you really in such a hurry?" Chao Guifeng's lungs were about to explode with rage. Zhang Mubai's methods are too despicable. We agreed to have a fair competition, but you actually came to kidnap him in the middle of the night. Although he said it with a smile, his tone was filled with coldness. Obviously, the anger in his heart had reached its peak. The silhouette seemed to pause for a moment. He didn't even turn around, nor did he pay attention to Chao Guifeng's words. Seeing that his whereabouts had been exposed, he suddenly exerted strength in his legs and shot out from the wall like an arrow. This time, he leapt with all his might and didn't deliberately try to hide his traces. Because his movements were too fast, the friction between his body and the air produced a chios sound. At the same time, a faint white smoke was emitting from the side of the silhouette's body, bringing with it a faint burnt smell. The speed of his movements was so fast that the friction with the air had reached a terrifying level. Like a black meteor or like a black lightning, he flashed over the wall and disappeared without a trace. Zhang Mubai, you're really shameless. Chao Guifeng was so angry that his whole body was trembling. Never in his wildest dreams would he have thought that Zhang Mubai would actually do something as shameful as kidnapping someone and escaping after his whereabouts had been discovered by them. It was simply shameless to the extreme. They had really been too careless. There was a rumor that this person did not care about his face at all. While they were interrogating, he had attacked a junior, the public enemy of the 3 Holy Lands, Jun Moxie. His actions could be said to be despicable and shameless to the extreme, but they still had to treat him with a fair attitude. They had really brought this upon themselves. With a whistle, the 7 enraged Holy Emperor chased after him at full speed. Everyone gritted their teeth and rubbed their palms. How many years had it been since they stepped into the pugilistic world? How could the 3 Holy Lands be this arrogant now? You even dare to rob the person recognized by our misty mansion. He even dared to snatch it in such a brazen and unbridled manner. This was simply intolerable. Uncle could tolerate it, but Aunt could not tolerate it. He could tolerate it by force, but not by lust. Motherfucker. If I don't beat you until 10,000 peach blossoms bloom, you won't know why the flowers are so red. The person in front of them continued to run at top speed. His speed was really as fast as a ghost, turning left and right, hoping to shake off the pursuers. But Chao Guifeng and the rest were still in hot pursuit. The person in front was still carrying a person that weighed more than 100 pounds. Although he had the advantage of escaping first, he was still unable to shake off the pursuers. Seeing that the 7 Holy Emperor were about to catch up to him, he suddenly laughed and said, "Since you can't bear to part with him, then I'll return him to you." That person suddenly stopped in his tracks. His left hand grabbed the person in his hand and raised his right palm. With a sharp whistling sound, he ruthlessly slapped the head of the person in his hand. No. Chao Guifeng's heart was about to shatter, and his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. He could only feel his entire body turning cold, as if he had fallen into an ice cave. In Chao Guifeng's eyes, everything in front of him seemed to have become slow motion. He watched as the palm slowly descended, and with a potch sound, the head of the person in his hand was smashed like a rotten watermelon. Blood and brain matter immediately flew into the dark night sky. Then, the black figure's hand loosened, and the person that was being carried fell down like a wooden stake. Then, he added a kick, and the lifeless body pounced towards Chao Guifeng. With a pew sound, It fell to the ground. There was simply no need to investigate. The entire head had been completely smashed under this palm. Even if the victim was the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters, he would definitely not be able to survive from such an injury. Not to mention that he was only a Silver Xian youth. The 7 people who were in the midst of flying were instantly dumbstruck and almost fell from the sky. Looking at the bloody corpse on the ground, everyone simultaneously felt as if they were in a dream. They had never thought that Zhang Mubai would be so ruthless. Ah! Chao Guofeng screamed towards the sky, his voice like thunder. His eyes instantly turned red, and with a watch sound, he spat out a mouthful of blood in the air. The black figure seemed to be shocked, and said with a hoarse voice, "I already said that I'll return it to you. You don't want it? Why didn't you catch it? Look, he fell to his death, right? You can't blame me for this. This is really the will of the heavens. Although I can't have the person, you guys can't have it either. Let's go our separate ways, and there will be no more disputes." Chao Guofeng landed on the ground, and his body arched as he panted. His eyes fiercely stared at the black figure, and said with a hateful tone, "Zhang Mubai." The black figure was still hoarse, and said with a surprised tone, "I'm afraid that you've mistaken me for someone else, right? I'm Jun Moxie, how can I be Zhang Mubai? Jun Moxie is already dead, and you killed him with your own hands." Chao Guofeng was so angry that he felt dizzy. His body swayed twice, and he almost spat out another mouthful of blood. He used all his strength to roar, "Zhang Mubai, fuck your grandmother." The black-clothed man was enraged and shouted, "Chao Guofeng, don't go too far." He seemed to have forgotten to conceal his voice in his anger. As soon as the words left his mouth, he immediately came to his senses and shut his mouth. However, his body flew up and spurted a mouthful of blood into the sky. He seemed to have activated some kind of acceleration secret technique and disappeared into the boundless night in the blink of an eye with an astonishing speed that left everyone dumbfounded. The 7 holy emperors' faces were all ashen. Chao Guofeng slowly walked to the corpse that had fallen down the wall, and with a tiny bit of hope, he fiddled with it for a while, and then his body swayed, and he spat out another mouthful of blood, and his body fell backwards. What hope was there? This corpse was only wearing a tight-fitting nightgown, and its head was gone. But from the size of the body, there was no doubt that it was a young man. 3 holy lands. Zhang Mubai. You and I are irreconcilable. Chao Guofeng panted, blood dripping from the corner of his mouth. His eyes were ferocious, as if he had gone mad. The other 6 people were also all pale, and they were so angry that they were hovering between life and death. The 7 of them were still excitedly discussing how to train this disciple of theirs, looking forward to the future glory of their disciple and the birth of the second 9 Nether first young master. Who knew that in the blink of an eye, the disciple that the 7 of them had spent so much effort to groom had turned into a pile of headless meat. He couldn't be any more dead. It was the free and natural physique. The legendary free and natural physique. The 9 Nether first young master's physique. The 7 of them did not say a word, and turned around, like 7 volcanoes that were about to erupt, and walked resolutely towards the small courtyard that Hermitage was staying in. All of them exuded an extremely dangerous aura. At this moment, the 7 of them had made up their minds. Even if they had to throw away their lives here, they must vent this anger. Zhang Mubai, you must pay the price. Everyone could understand Zhang Mubai's deliberately mystifying actions. The meaning behind his words was even more clear. If I can't get it, you guys can forget about getting it. Let's just go our separate ways, and avoid a future crisis for the 3 holy lands. Zhang Mubai had already done something like this once. Wasn't it the same when he ambushed Jun Moxie in the Tian Fa forest? A fellow who could disregard his reputation and ambush his juniors. What kind of despicable things could he not do? It was exactly the same as what had happened this time, a different approach to achieve the same result. But Jun Moxie had already made it clear that he was going against the 3 holy lands. Although it was despicable of you to ambush him, the result was still understandable. But this disciple of mine is only a Silver Xian now. By the time he matures, your bones, Zhang Mubai, will have already turned into ashes. What are you so worried about? Could it be that you want to kill a genius just because you discovered that he doesn't belong to the three holy lands? What kind of shameful logic is this? Furthermore, what you've killed this time is the future hope of our misty mansion. 300 years, 500 years, 1,000 years, or even a legend that could rival the Nine Nether first young master. Even if this matter were to be spread back to the misty mansion, it would still result in a fight to the death. Jean Mubai, do you think that we won't know it's you just because you changed your voice? Aren't you treating us as fools? Just based on that holy emperor level of cultivation and that despicable behavior. Looking around the world, other than you, a trashy saint emperor, who else could do such a despicable and shameless thing? Who else but you could do such despicable things? At this time, Jean Mubai, who was hated to the core by the 7 holy emperors, had finally reached an agreement with the experts from the 3 holy lands, Hermitage, Illusory Blood Sea, and Supreme Golden City. He was the person in charge of this mission from Hermitage. After paying a considerable price and promising many benefits, everyone finally decided to help Jean Mubai obtain this disciple. Jean Mubai was finally at ease. Although he had paid a great price, he still sincerely expressed his gratitude to everyone. After the decision was made, everyone returned to their own rooms. Jean Mubai also returned to his own room to think carefully. Although he had already obtained the promise of all the experts from the 3 holy lands, the Misty Mansion would definitely not let go so easily. How could he handle this matter without any problems? He would probably have to plan carefully. In any case, this disciple with the free and natural physique, this old man must obtain him and will not let anyone else. Chapter 846. His voice was truly earth-shattering. It was so vulgar and unbridled. Probably everyone in Chrysanthemum City had heard it. This voice could be said to be extremely furious, and even had an extremely twisted tone of indignation, causing the words to be unclear. Jean Mubai actually did not recognize whose voice it was. But the strength of the person who was cursing was definitely not below him. Who the hell did I offend? Is there a need to use all of his strength to curse me in the middle of the night? Is he afraid that others can't hear him? This was something he had never encountered ever since he became famous. Jean Mubai could not help but be furious. Even if the person cursing was not inferior to him, he could not let it go easily. Just as he was about to go out to investigate, a sudden boom sounded. The wall of his courtyard had been smashed open by something, and he could not help but be shocked. When he flew out, he heard a shioi sound, and a sharp sound pierced through the air. Jean Mubai focused his eyes and saw a black robe fluttering towards him. Someone actually used a piece of clothing as a hidden weapon. What is this? Do you think you can deal with me with just a piece of clothing? This is looking down on me too much. There was no absolute in this world. No one had said that a piece of clothing could not deal with an expert like the Holy Emperor. In this world, there were always things that could not be imagined, but definitely not done. Jean Mubai, who felt that he was being looked down upon, was enraged. He grabbed the piece of clothing in his hand, and just as he was about to say something, he felt that his hand was actually sticky. The clothing was actually covered in blood, and there was even some white fluid. Jean Mubai looked around suspiciously, but did not discover any movement. It was as if the blood-stained black clothing had fallen from the sky. Jean Mubai was also an intelligent person. After thinking for a while, he already understood a little. He could not help but chuckle in disdain, thinking to himself, could it be that the person who launched the sneak attack was planning to frame me? Just based on a piece of blood-stained black clothing? Trying to frame me, Jean Mubai? You're looking down on me too much. Even if you framed me, who would dare to arrest me? What a joke! He laughed and said, what kind of scoundrel is this? To actually use such a despicable method, how laughable! Is it really that funny? Jean Mubai, how ridiculous is today's matter? Can you tell this old man in detail? This old man is very interested, very interested. An extremely gloomy and oppressive voice came from outside. Even with Jean Mubai's cultivation, after hearing this, he couldn't help but shiver. Chao Guofeng. Although the tone of the person who spoke was strange and out of character, Jean Mubai was still able to instantly determine that the person who spoke was Chao Guofeng. the sky gradually brightened, and in the hazy morning light, 7 imposing figures slowly walked in from the entrance of the small courtyard. Their eyes were bloodshot, and it was obvious that they were filled with extreme hatred. All of them stared fixedly at Jean Mubai, and their gazes instantly focused on the blood-stained black clothing in his hands. The 7 of them moved in unison, and at the same time, their teeth chattered loudly. At this moment, Jean Mubai could faintly feel that something was wrong, but he did not pay too much attention to it. In his mind, no matter how big the matter was, it could still be discussed. Everyone had been friends for hundreds of years, so could there really be anything that they could not settle? Casually throwing the black clothing to the side, he took 2 steps forward and said with a friendly smile, "Brother Chow, why are you here so early? Could it be that you can't wait to accept the free and natural physique as your disciple and are here to discuss it with this old man?" Jean Mubai's words could be said to be mentioning the pot that shouldn't be boiled, directly stabbing Chao Guofeng's bleeding wound once again. Especially his laughter. In Chao Guofeng's ears, it was like mockery. And it was mockery that rejoiced in Chao Guofeng's misfortune. This was equivalent to saying, "You can do it. Didn't you refuse to accept my great-grandson as a disciple? You want to accept a free and natural physique genius? Go ahead and accept a pile of rotten meat as a disciple. Even if I, Jean Mubai, can't get it, you, Chao Guofeng, can forget about having it. Want to be the master of the #1 expert in the world? Dream on." Especially when he said those words, it was as if he had casually thrown the black clothing he had just taken off onto the ground. He did not even bother to conceal it. In the eyes of Chao Guofeng and the other 7 holy emperors, this was a blatant provocation. The boiling anger of Chao Guofeng and the other experts was like a ladle of oil being poured onto it. Free and natural physique, accept him as a disciple, discuss with you? Chao Guofeng spat out word by word in a tone as if his heart was being pierced and his blood was flowing. Jean Mubai, discuss with you? Fuck you. Jean Mubai's expression instantly stiffened. He had never expected Chao Guofeng to spout such vulgarities without any intention of concealing it. Following Chao Guofeng's words, Jean Mubai immediately reacted. The person who had scolded him so loudly was none other than this holy Emperor Chao in front of him. The 2 loud scoldings had both included his name and surname, brazenly and brazenly. As if he was afraid that others didn't know that the person Chao Guofeng was scolding was me, Jean Mubai. Who is Jean Mubai? He was an expert of the Holy Emperor realm. Not to mention scolding openly, even if his voice was heavy, it was not allowed. Wherever he went, there would be flattery and flattery. Chao Guofeng's 2 scoldings were extremely vulgar and did not have the slightest bit of self-restraint. Jean Mubai's rage instantly soared to the 9 heavens. Even if your Misty and Misty Mansion is powerful, you can't be so arrogant to this extent, right? Chao Guofeng, Jean Mubai hollered, a cold light flashing in his eyes. This old man has always treated you with respect, and has tolerated you in every way for hundreds of years. This old man tolerated you, but that doesn't mean that this old man is afraid of you. Since you've scolded me like this, you must give me an explanation today. Otherwise what? What do you dare to do? Chao Guofeng smiled coldly. His smile was actually filled with dense killing intent. It was a kind of sharpness that was accompanied by a kind of sorrow that was greater than the desolation of a dead heart. Otherwise I, Jean Mubai, will not rest until one of us is dead. Jean Mubai said fiercely. Jean Mubai's face had already turned ashen from anger. In addition to that, he felt that he was in the right, so how could he be willing to give in? At this moment, dawn had arrived, and everyone had already woken up. Coupled with Chao Guofeng's loud shout, the experts from the 3 holy lands had rushed over without even putting on their clothes. When they rushed over to take a look, they could not help but be dumbfounded. The person in charge of Hermitage's side, Jean Mubai, and the 7 holy emperors from the Misty and Misty Mansion were in a standoff. The 8 of them were glaring at each other fiercely like fighting cocks. The atmosphere was extremely heavy and oppressive, as if a fight could break out at any moment. Everyone's face was filled with grief and indignation. Chao Guofeng and the others were so angry that their faces were distorted, and their eyeballs were almost popping out. Zhang Mubai's face was also ashen, and his entire body was ferocious. It was as if both sides had an irreconcilable hatred. Just what could have caused the 8 Saint Emperors to be enraged to such an extent? Isn't this a little too unimaginable? I clearly saw the 8 of them chatting and laughing as they went out for a drink yesterday. Who would have thought that the situation would change in a single night? It was as if an irreconcilable blood feud had been formed between them. Now that there were so many people watching, Zhang Mubai could not put down his pride. He knew that he was no match for them, but he still had to endure it. Otherwise, how would he be able to stand in front of others in the future? As for Chao Guofeng, he would definitely not give in. What he wanted to do the most right now was to smash Zhang Mubai's head with a single slap. Hearing Zhang Mubai's heroic words, Chao Guofeng let out a long and mournful laugh. Irreconcilable? Zhang Mubai, you are really good at pretending. Do you think that I can still coexist with you in this world? What a ridiculous joke. Zhang Mubai, it's been 600 years, and I didn't realize that you were actually such a person. He looked at Zhang Mubai with grief and indignation. Using a tone that sounded like he was pounding his chest, he said with infinite regret, "This old man was blind. This old man was blind for a whole 600 years. Zhang Mubai, I finally know what kind of person you are today. No, you don't even have the word person in your eyes. You are a bastard who is worse than a beast. Don't you want to be irreconcilable with me? I'll fulfill your wish. Today, only one of us will be able to leave this place alive." Scoundrel! Zhang Mubai's temper flared up as he blurted out, "Chao Guofeng, you've gone too far. You didn't accept my great-grandson as your disciple. You watched as I, Zhang Mubai, had no descendants. Then, you forcefully snatched my disciple, leaving me without a successor. Just as you said, helping me is a favor, but not helping me is a reason. I'll treat it as if I've known you for 600 years for nothing. But now, you actually scolded me in public. When the words came out of your mouth, it actually became my fault. It's Zhang Mubai's fault. Chao Guofeng, it's really a pity that you don't become a storyteller or an actor." Zhang Mubai was extremely sad and indignant. This was too much of a bully. This was too much of a bully. I've never seen such a shameless person. If you don't want to help me, then forget it. If you see a good talent, then bring him back. I haven't thought of a countermeasure yet. Besides, if you insist on snatching him, I'll give him to you. He's already living in your courtyard. What else do you want? Now, you actually dare to mention my name and scold me in the middle of the night. Am I, Zhang Mubai, someone who can be scolded so casually? You Chao Guofeng care about your face. But do you think that I, Zhang Mubai, should not care about my face? My, Zhang Mubai's, face is also worth 1,000 gold pieces. You think you're so great just because you're one rank higher? If we really fight, even if I can't win, I still have the means to drag you away with me. The people from the 3 Holy Lands all tried to persuade them. But the 8 people in the field all stiffened their necks and glared at each other with hatred in their eyes. A battle was about to break out at any moment. None of them were willing to accept the persuasion of others. Zhang Mubai, you despicable scum, hand over your life. Chao Guofeng roared. He couldn't bear it any longer. His body suddenly disappeared from the spot. When he reappeared, he'd already circled around Zhang Mubai and fiercely attacked him with more than 10 palms. Zhang Mubai was filled with rage. He neither dodged nor gave way, and each of his palms met the blow head-on. Loud banging sounds rang out in the field. Following that, the ground started to crack. The walls of the courtyard started to collapse, and the houses started to collapse. Amidst the dust and smoke, the 2 of them simultaneously countered each other's moves. At the same time, they leaped up into the air and extended the battle into the sky. The spectators below didn't even have the time to understand what was going on, and the 2 of them had already started fighting. Chapter 847. After a loud explosion in the air, a shocking scene suddenly appeared. With 2 long roars, the 2 of them suddenly merged and separated, leaving behind a series of afterimages in the air. Then they once again clashed, their speed getting faster and faster. In the eyes of the people below, there were suddenly countless Jean Mubais in the sky, and at the same time, there were also countless Chao Guofongs. Every one of them was abnormally real, and they were fighting each other. When the phantoms on this side disappeared, more phantoms appeared on the other side. The speed of the two people had obviously reached the limit. Such a fast battle was not unfamiliar to the audience. After all, they were all martial saints and above. Even if their strength was not as good as Chao Guo and Jean Mubai, they were still roughly on the same level. While the spectators were marveling at the skills of Chao Zhan and Lu Qiue, they could also tell that the two of them were fighting with all their might. Every move they made was aimed at their opponent's vital points. Neither of them showed any mercy. Between the two of them, if either of them made the slightest mistake, they would immediately face a disaster. Those extremely ruthless moves sent chills down the spines of the spectators. If these moves were used to attack themselves, they might not be able to withstand it. If they couldn't withstand it, what would the result be? Without a doubt, if they failed, they would definitely die miserably. The comrades of the Holy Emperor who had once fought side by side, old friends who had known each other for more than 600 years, were actually fighting each other, vowing to fight to the death. The culprit, young Master Jun Emosia, was beaming with joy as he watched from midair. In fact, he was extremely excited. A battle between experts of the Holy Emperor level, this was a rare opportunity to observe and learn. Moreover, the two Holy Emperor experts were not holding back at all, and were going all out in a life-and-death battle. Although this matter was caused by him, Jun Moxie did not feel the slightest bit guilty. This could only be said, closing the door and blocking the entrance was purely a coincidence. I've never thought of becoming a genius in your eyes, and even more so, I don't want to become the successor of you bunch of old fellows. I just came out for a meal and coincidentally met the world's #1 madman. Just as I was about to execute my grand plan, you guys messed up my plans. This young master is definitely not that free and natural physique. This young master still has this bit of self-awareness. It's definitely not that Xian physique, it's definitely a Hotian physique that can't be any Hotian. He only started cultivating the Hotian physique at the age of 16 or 17. Compared to other geniuses in the world, he was 15 or 16 years late. Perhaps I should say that I have the Hongjun Pagoda physique. Have you heard of it? Never heard of it? That's right, it would be a miracle if you had heard of it. To be honest, this young master's eyesight is not ordinary. What qualifications do you have to accept me as your successor? Can your cultivation method compare to the world's #1 cultivation method, the art of unlocking heaven's fortune? Do you have the Hongjun Pagoda that can provide unlimited spiritual energy? Do you have primordial violet chi? It's not that I'm looking down on you, but you probably haven't even heard of this before. If you want to accept me as your successor, you'd better cultivate for another few thousand years. You want to take this young master in with that little bit of strength and the rubbish in your hands? You're far from qualified. At the very least, one had to be as strong as the 9 nether first young master to barely qualify, right? But that was only a candidate, not the first candidate. The 3 Holy Lands were mighty, and the Misty Mansion was overbearing. He swore to be enemies with this young master, but this young master couldn't afford to offend him for the time being. Even if he fought him head-on, he wouldn't be able to defeat him. I was just worrying and looking for allies everywhere, but you guys scared my allies away. So, since you think I'm a piece of meat, if I don't find some trouble for you, wouldn't I be letting you down? From the moment you discovered me, this trouble was destined to fall on your heads. He didn't notice. Then I can only say, Sol 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 Sol. This is the authentic song of the Oriole, using Chandra's words. After all, I'm right in front of you. It's your own fault that you couldn't discover me, but you can't blame me. So, Jun Dashao put in all his effort to show off his best acting skills along the way, vividly recreating the feeling of a simple mountain village youth coming to a famous big city, and then unexpectedly seeing a grand scene that he had never seen before. He even showed off his so-called free and natural physique, ate the spirit stone immortal milk, and then acted humble and respectful to his teacher. 100% acting, even though this actor's quality was actually very idol-like. In just a few sentences, he had already tricked those old fellows who were already in love with him to the point that they couldn't bear to part with him. He had successfully built up a deep emotional foundation. As long as there was this emotional foundation, it would be even easier to do things. No matter if it was doing good or bad things, as long as there was an emotional bond, everything would go smoothly. Once there was an emotional foundation, even if it was rape or being raped, it would still be a loving couple. As for framing someone, it would be a walk in the park and success would come naturally. And it would also be able to trigger the greatest amount of indignation. So, when the few holy emperors in the Misty Mansion completely accepted him and were discussing his future, Jun Dashao used the yin-yang escape technique to find an unlucky fellow from the Chen family who was about the same size as him, sealed his acupoints, and brought him back. At a suitable time, he purposely made some noise, changed into black clothes, and floated out of the window with that unlucky fellow in tow. Jun Dashao actually didn't do much in this process. He just ran wildly for a while, and then smashed the head of that unlucky fellow with a slap. Then he said a few words in a hoarse voice, and directly left. The movement technique that he used in the process was naturally the unique skill that made the Holy Emperor famous. It was a pity that Jun Dashao didn't imitate it very well, but then again, if he imitated it too well, it would instead raise suspicions. According to Jun Moxi's estimation, after this classic framing scene, the few people from the Misty Mansion and the 3 Holy Lands would definitely quarrel and part on bad terms. It might even cause the temporary alliance between the 3 Holy Lands and the Misty Mansion to collapse. If the only enemies left were the people from the 3 Holy Lands, the pressure on him would be greatly reduced. But Jun Dashao seemed to have overestimated the endurance of this bunch of old fogies, or rather, underestimated the importance of his free and natural physique. These old fogies didn't act according to the script at all, and started fighting to the death the moment they started. This result was far beyond Jun Dashao's expectations. It seemed to be a little too good. Too ferocious. Too shocking. Looks like this drug was too strong. How would he know that with the free and natural physique, he was a living treasure in Chao Guifeng's eyes? The degree of importance was even more precious than having a child at an old age. Seeing his ideal free and natural physique, his successor, turned into a pile of rotten meat, Chao Guifeng directly broke down. How would Jun Moxi know that Chao Guifeng had been searching for such a good talent for 500 to 600 years? 500 to 600 years of hope, turned into flowing water in an instant. If Chao Guifeng hadn't seen Jun Moxi's physique before, then when Jun Moxi died, Chao Guifeng would at most sigh and say, "What a pity." But now, Holy Emperor Chao's acceptance of him as a disciple was already set in stone. Just as he was looking forward to the future, he was suddenly smashed down from heaven to hell. Holy Emperor Chao was equivalent to playing an extreme bungee jumping between heaven and hell. This disparity was simply too great. So Chao Guifeng's madness was completely within the expectations of Holy Emperor Chao Guifeng, but it wasn't within Jun Moxi's consideration. But now, he wasn't considering these things. He was stroking his chin and thinking. Since it was already so lively, how should he deal with it, so that the battle below would become even more vicious? If more than 100 people here were to die together, how wonderful would that be? Below, in midair, the battle between the 2 Holy Emperor experts had already reached a climax. Both Holy Emperor Chao Guifeng had already taken out their weapons, and it was a true hand-to-hand battle. The 2 long swords were like dragons soaring in the sky, moving as fast as lightning, shuttling back and forth. The 2 figures split into thousands of figures, fighting with their lives on the line. On the ground, there were 6 Holy Emperor Chao Guifeng who had a better understanding of the situation, as well as a large group of spectators who had no idea what was going on. They were all exclaiming in shock and cold sweat. The Holy Emperor is indeed the Holy Emperor. Look at this attack power, it's really powerful. Luckily, the 2 people above were still relatively close in terms of cultivation, and weren't at the point where life and death could be determined in just a few moves. Thus, they were still able to successfully control the force they released, targeting it and not letting it leak out. Otherwise, this beautiful Chen manor would have long been turned into a pile of rubble. The leader of the illusory Blood Sea side, Holy Emperor Hai Wuya, walked over, wearing a purple robe. He frowned at the 6 holy emperors of Misty Mansion and asked, "Everyone, what's going on? Why did the 2 of them start fighting for no reason? Aren't they still discussing about the free and natural physique disciple? Look at the 2 of them, how are they going to discuss this?" The Holy Emperor of Misty Mansion, Bai Qifeng, said with a straight face, "Thank you for your concern, Lord Hai. There's no need to discuss the matter of accepting a disciple anymore." "Brother Bai, what happened this time? Please enlighten me." Hai Wuya raised his head to look at the battle in the sky, then turned back to look at Bai Qifeng indifferently. "What else is there to say? It's all because that Zhan Mubai is despicable and shameless to the extreme. Brother Hai, your 3 holy lands are really full of talents. This is also because old Chow made the first move. If old Chow didn't make a move, this old man would have made a move as well. This kind of trash really dirties this old man's eyes. Just based on him, he can actually become a pillar of support for the 3 holy lands. Looks like the hermitage has really declined." Bai Qifeng was also filled with anger. He flicked his sleeves and turned his head, not wanting to speak anymore. That disciple of his, he also had a 7th of it, and he was crippled just like that. "Today, I went to the vehicle management office to register for a driver's license. Very sad, I was found out to be colorblind. When I was a soldier, my eyes were still fine. Why am I colorblind now? So depressing." The auntie at the vehicle management office pointed at a picture and asked me, "What is this?" I shook my head and asked again, "What is this picture?" I looked at it carefully for a long time and said embarrassedly, "It looks like a *****, so I was chased out." Chapter 848. Brother Bai is also involved in this matter? Brother Bai, you better tell us in detail, how is Zhan Mubai despicable and shameless? Another person in sackcloth came over. The leader of the Supreme Golden City team this time was a Holy Emperor expert, He Zhiqiu. Bai Qifeng spat out a breath of air and said gloomily, "Yesterday, we went out together and discovered a youth with the free and natural physique. You guys should know about this, right?" The 2 nodded at the same time. Bai Qifeng said, "The 7 of us agreed to take this youth as our disciple and bring him back to the Misty Mansion to train him. But who would have thought, just an hour ago, Zhan Mubai snuck in, wanting to kidnap this youth. When he was discovered by us, Zhan Mubai saw that he couldn't escape our pursuit and actually killed the youth with a slap on the spot. This kind of behavior is really despicable and shameless. Not to mention old Chow, even the 6 of us would never let him go. How could he do it? That was a rare seedling that was hard to find in this world. Free and natural physique." Bai Qifeng gritted his teeth, and when he said this, the muscles on his face started to twitch. His eyes shone fiercely, and in the end, he couldn't bear the huge disappointment in his heart and started to curse. It can't be, right?" Hai Wuya and He Zhiqiu exclaimed at the same time, looking at each other. If that was really the case, then this matter was really serious. Who didn't know that Chao Guofeng had been searching for disciples for hundreds of years, and his eyes were already green with greed? Just like that, the disciple he valued so much was killed with a slap, and it was even the free and natural physique. This Zhan Mubai was really daring. If it were the 2 of them, they would never dare to do such a thing. This was directly a life and death feud. This kind of hatred, to Chao Guofeng, was even more irreconcilable than killing one's father or stealing one's wife. The way the 2 looked at Zhan Mubai instantly changed. To be able to do such a thing, Zhan Mubai was even crazier than the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters. We chased him all the way here. Also, look at that black shirt on the ground. When we arrived, Zhan Mubai had just taken it off his body. We saw it with our own eyes. How could it be fake? Bai Qifeng's face was as cold as ice. Besides, framing the Holy Emperor of your 3 holy lands for no reason, is there a need for us to do that? Could it actually be true? Old John really did this? The 2 holy emperors were dumbfounded. Never in his wildest dreams did he expect Jean Mubai to be so despicable. Believe it or not, it's up to you. This spy has no interest in playing with you. Bai Qifeng glared, about to explode. Although the two of them were also Holy Emperor experts, Bai Qifeng was also not afraid. Since they had already shed all pretense of cordiality, so what if he had to fight two more Holy Emperors? There was nowhere for him to vent his anger. His words were not polite at all, but in the ears of Hai Wuya and He Jiqiu, it increased the credibility of this matter. Chao Guofeng was steady and scheming, while Bai Qifeng was as sharp as a sword. The combination of the two had always been the golden combination of the Misty Mansion. These two people were the least likely to purposely stir up a fight between the Misty Mansion and the three Holy Lands. Even if there was the slightest possibility, the one who made the move should have been Bai Qifeng. But now, the one who made the move was the usually calm Chao Guofeng, and it seemed like Chao Guofeng had a deep friendship with Jean Mubai for hundreds of years. If it wasn't for the fact that something really happened that caused this third-level Holy Emperor to completely lose control and be heartbroken, this usually steady Holy Emperor would definitely not be so rash. Could it be that Jean Mubai really did such a thing? But, no matter what, they couldn't just watch as Jean Mubai was killed by the people of the Misty Mansion. The two of them looked at each other and quickly came to a decision. They shouted at the same time, "Stop, you two! I have something to say." Before he finished speaking, a loud bang sounded in the air. Then, a figure shot through the ground like a shooting star, like a bear that had lost control and crashed into a wall. Plop, plop, plop. He crashed through more than a dozen walls before finally stopping. A figure stood up from the ground with a face full of dirt and grime. With a loud roar of grief and indignation, he jumped out. That person was none other than Jean Mubai. On the other side, Chao Guofeng's figure landed on the ground unsteadily. He staggered back continuously. Every step he took left a deep footprint on the green stone floor. Stone shards flew up into the sky, hitting the walls around him. He retreated for 20 to 30 steps, but he still couldn't stop his momentum. His back slammed heavily into the wall, and with a loud boom, the entire wall collapsed. But Chao Guofeng had also finally stopped his momentum. Straightening his back, he stood up straight. His white beard fluttered in the wind, and his eyes were spitting fire. With a roar, he charged towards Jean Mubai, obviously intending to continue the battle. Which one of the people present didn't have sharp eyes? In this battle, Jean Mubai fell to the ground in a sorry state. He couldn't even stand properly. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. As for Chao Guofeng, he only staggered a few steps with a flushed face. It was obvious that Jean Mubai had suffered a huge loss. If the battle continued, he would really die in Chao Guofeng's hands. Stop! Hai Wuya and He Jiqiu rushed forward and stopped Chao Guofeng. Brother Chao, don't be impatient. Please listen to me first. Chao Guofeng saw that they were only here to stop him, but not Jean Mubai. He was instantly enraged and snorted. The three of you want to join hands? Hee, even if the three of you come at me together, what do I have to fear? Today, I won't rest until one of us is dead. Brother Chao, you've misunderstood. Hai Wuya laughed bitterly. It seemed like Chao Guofeng was really anxious this time. To actually provoke him so indiscriminately. Before Chao Guofeng could reply, loud bangs rang out. The three of them looked over at the same time, only to see Bai Qifeng's white robes fluttering in the wind. He had already clashed with Jean Mubai. One was an arrow at the end of its flight, and was injured, while the other was still full of energy, ready to attack. And these two people were originally equivalent to a second-level Holy Emperor. Who was stronger and who was weaker, there was no need to ask. Jean Mubai didn't even have time to defend, and his body and face were struck repeatedly. Bai Qifeng, even you dare to go against this old man. Can your Misty Mansion faction really be so unbridled and lawless? Right now, Jean Mubai could be said to be filled with grief and indignation. Heavens, great earth. Just who did I offend? Who the fuck did I offend? Fuck, even if you want to bully someone, you should at least give me a reasonable reason, right? All of you are Holy Emperor level experts. One is like this, Two are also the same, attacking without distinguishing right from wrong, and taking advantage of someone's precarious position. Who can stand it? What is this? Even the process of framing me is skipped. Is there still any justice in this world? Brother Bai, stop. Quick, stop. Have mercy. Hai Wu Ya hurriedly went over to stop. He could only shout but didn't dare to interfere. Once he did, it would mean that the battle between the three of them had escalated to a dispute between the three Holy Lands and the Misty Mansion. This responsibility, he couldn't bear it. But how fast was the methods of a Holy Emperor-level expert? In just the time it took to say a sentence, Jean Mubai's face was already covered in bruises, his eyes had turned into panda eyes, and blood was dripping from the corner of his mouth. His expression was extremely miserable, and he looked extremely pathetic. After fighting for half a day, even though the situation was not favorable, even though he was in a somewhat pathetic state, there were no injuries on his face. But in this short moment, Bai Qifeng had aimed at the empty space to beat up a fallen dog, completely aiming for his face. This Holy Emperor Jean was like a pig's head that had just come out of the oven, his eyes shining like stars. When Hai Wu Ya flew over to pull Bai Qifeng away, Jean Mubai had already suffered over a dozen punches, his head spinning as he tumbled to the ground. The experts from the three Holy Lands all had a look of pity on their faces. This was too much, wasn't it? All of them were experts in the world. Was there a need to be so heavy-handed? Even if you killed him, you shouldn't have hit his face. Losing face like this grudge would not be resolved so easily. And the last leader of the three Holy Lands, He Zhiqiu, noticed that the other 5 experts from the Misty Mansion were actually venting their anger, and there was a faint killing intent in their eyes. It was obvious that they did not have the time to make a move just now, or perhaps Bai Qifeng had gotten there first. If there was a chance, these 5 people might have made a move. He Zhiqiu was greatly shocked in his heart. Just what major event had Jean Mubai done to actually cause the 7 great Saint Emperors to have such great resentment towards him? From the looks of it, these 7 people simply had the intention of ganging up on him and dismembering him. This matter, perhaps it's a misunderstanding. Everyone, please calm down. We've all been brothers for hundreds of years. What matter can't we sit down and discuss? Although He Zhiqiu knew that the grudge here was not light, he could not help but speak up for Jean Mubai. No matter what, the people from the Misty Mansion were outsiders. Chao Guofeng spat harshly. There's no way this matter can be resolved peacefully. Jean Mubai turned the disciple that I've spent 600 years searching for into nothingness with a single palm. This grudge is absolutely irreconcilable. Jean Mubai is jealous of the talented and narrow-minded. If he doesn't give me a satisfactory explanation, I'll seek justice even if I have to kill my way to the hermitage. Chao Guofeng. You bastard! Jean Mubai had just crawled up from the ground. His face was covered in blood, and he was so ashamed and angry that he wanted to commit suicide. Like a ghost, he cried out in a hoarse voice. Chao Guofeng, you've really gone too far today. First, you insulted me for no reason and then attacked me first. Could it be that I, Jean Mubai, should be bullied by you? This old man has lived an honest and upright life, with a clear conscience. When have I ever been narrow-minded and jealous of the talented? Chapter 849. Third Night. Jun Moxie is the greatest threat to the three Holy Lands. This old man had no choice but to launch a sneak attack that day, and it was indeed because I had a guilty conscience. But to the people of the three Holy Lands, it had removed a fatal threat. This old man may have lost my reputation, but I still have a clear conscience. If I could do it all over again, this old man would still make the same choice. For the great cause of the Holy Lands, what does this old man's mere reputation count for? Well said, even this despicable act of sneak attacking a junior can be described in such a righteous and benevolent manner. Jean Mubai, didn't you just say that as long as there's an existence that threatens the three Holy Lands, we should use any means to get rid of it? Even if it's the most despicable and despicable means, we will not hesitate? Bai Qifeng said viciously. That's right. Is there anything wrong with that? Could it be that you are completely indifferent to the threat of the Misty Mansion? Everyone is the same, why are you acting so strangely? Jean Mubai said angrily, with a sense of righteousness. The moment Jean Mubai said this, everyone present looked at him with a look of admiration. Only Hijichio noticed that the 7 holy emperors of the Misty Mansion's eyes had changed again. If there was only killing intent in their eyes before, it was definitely a naked killing intent now. Good, very well said. Jean Mubai, now you finally admit that you killed our disciple? Speaking of which, that disciple of ours really deserves to die. Isn't he another great threat to the 3 Holy Lands? As long as we can get rid of him, the 3 Holy Lands can rest easy from now on. Bai Qifeng's voice became more and more vicious. Jean Mubai coughed violently, his eyes filled with hatred and indignation, even a little confused. As he said this, his eyes suddenly widened, as if he had just regained his senses. What did you just say? What do you mean get rid of a great threat? You said that I killed your disciple with my own hands in front of you? This? Where did this come from? What the hell are you talking about? Now that things have come to this, you still want to deny it. Didn't you say it clearly just now? Aren't you afraid that my disciple will become a huge problem for your 3 Holy Lands in the future? Chao Guofeng was so angry that he almost vomited blood. I saw it with my own eyes. I followed you all the way here, and I saw you with a bloody robe. You still want to deny it? Do you think you can deny it? Me? Why should I deny it? I killed your disciple? Jean Mubai shook his head. This brother of his was first scolded, then beaten up, and now he was being pestered with so many words. He was really confused. Your disciple? Where did you get your disciple from? Are you still playing the fool? That free and natural physique. Chao Guofeng stomped his feet and roared. Just as he was about to charge forward and attack again, when he said the words free and natural physique, Chao Guofeng felt as though his heart was being stabbed by a knife. In 600 years he had only found one. Before Chao Guofeng could rush over, Jean Mubai had already jumped up in shock. His eyes widened and he shouted, What did you say? What did you say? The free and natural physique was killed by me? Chao Guofeng, what kind of nightmare are you having? What nonsense are you saying? The brat. After saying that, he regained his senses and shouted angrily, That brat is dead. Bai Qifeng looked at him with a cold smile and said coldly, Jean Mubai, keep pretending. Try your best to pretend. Why didn't you become an actor back then? With your acting skills, you would definitely be a famous actor, and your achievements would definitely be above the achievements of the Holy Emperor. Pretend your head. Jean Mubai flew into a rage. How could I possibly kill him? I can't even wait to treasure him. How could I possibly kill him? Just last night, this old man specially sought out Brother Hai and Brother He for a discussion. Both of you helped me with the plan, and this old man paid 2 stalks of 1,000-year-old spirit herbs and 2 divine weapons. Only after midnight did I manage to convince Brother Hai and Brother He to help. I was just about to discuss who the disciple should be. How could he have been killed by me in the blink of an eye? What kind of matter is this? As he spoke, Hai Wuya and Hijichio also nodded their heads, their faces slightly awkward. Although the 2 of them had agreed to help, they had also received some benefits. Now that this benefit was revealed by Jean Mubai in front of everyone, they couldn't help but feel uncomfortable. But they also knew that Jean Mubai was also forced into a corner now, and he definitely had to bring out the best evidence. Although they were unhappy, they did not really find it strange. With Brother Hai and Brother He as witnesses, there is naturally no doubt about this. But after the discussion, what did you do? Did you think that by purposely mystifying things and coming up with such a smokescreen, you were absolutely foolproof? After that, you changed into black clothes and snuck into the courtyard that we were staying in and kidnapped him. But you were discovered by us, and seeing that there was no hope of escaping, you committed such a despicable act. Since there was no hope of taking him in as a disciple, you hardened your heart and killed him to prevent him from becoming a huge problem for your 3 Holy Lands in the future. Could it be that all of this has nothing to do with you just because you don't admit it? Jean Mubai. You dared to do it, but you're afraid to admit it. You're really trying to cover up, despicable to the extreme. Chao Guofeng said angrily. In a flash, he had already grabbed the black clothes on the ground. Jean Mubai, the 7 of us brothers chased you all the way here, all the way to your courtyard, and saw you change into this black clothes with our own eyes, and you still want to deny it. You really make this old man's teeth turn cold. This old man must have really been blind to actually treat you as a friend. Black clothes, black clothes? Jean Mubai's eyes stared blankly, and he finally understood that he had really been ruthlessly tricked by someone this time. The various unforeseen events just now flashed before his eyes. The sound, him coming out, the wall collapsing, the black clothes suddenly rushing over, and then him catching it, and then Chao Guofeng and the other 6 people arriving outside the wall. The methods of the person who had plotted in the dark were all closely linked to one another. They were truly meticulous to the extreme. He actually didn't even have a chance to defend himself before falling into a huge conspiracy, directly causing the Saint Emperors to turn against each other. Jean Mubai trembled violently and jumped up. He was so aggrieved that he almost vomited blood. These clothes were thrown to me by someone else. This is a trap. Someone else has set up this trap to frame me. How could I possibly do such a despicable act? Frame you? Pa. Chao Guofeng was so anxious that he laughed instead. Jean Mubai, you don't need to quibble anymore. Daring to admit to your actions, that's the style of a gentleman. Daring to act but being afraid to take responsibility was the behavior of a vile person. Tonight, no matter how glib your tongue is, you will not be spared from blood. My disciple, may your heroic spirit not be far away. Watch as your master takes revenge for you, and make this thief pay with blood. This wasn't done by me. Holy Emperor Jean's entire body was trembling, and his eyes were filled with urgency. His expression was filled with extreme grief and indignation, and his miserable appearance with his bruised face and bleeding mouth and nose made him look extremely pitiful. The grievances all over his body couldn't be washed away at all. He looked around and roared again. This really wasn't done by me, Bai Chi Feng chuckled coldly. Jean Mubai, no matter what your intentions were, the result is that you've destroyed the hope of the 7 of us. Do you think that just by saying that it wasn't done by you, it can prove that it wasn't you? What a joke. Hermitage's ability to distort black and white is probably not this good, right? To think that you still dare to call yourself open and above board, with a clear conscience. How did you even think of saying that? You said that it was done by me? Where's the evidence? Where's the corpse? Just based on the words of the few of you, you want to convict me? What's the reason? Why did I kill that child? Jean Mubai roared, the muscles at the corner of his eyes twitching, and the veins on his forehead bulging. The facts are all there, who doesn't know? You've already said the reason yourself. What a strong reason, and you're still asking us for the reason. The evidence is this black robe. As for the corpse? Bai Chi Feng scoffed and said coldly, Old 6, go and bring the corpse over, let Holy Emperor Jean see his masterpiece. The rest of the brothers, prepare yourselves. This is revenge, not a spar. Listen to my command, attack together, and kill this shameless Jean Mubai. Whoever dares to stop us will be the enemy of the Misty Mansion, and the death of the 7 of us. A white-clothed figure leaped out, and not long after he returned with a corpse. This corpse was headless, and it looked extremely miserable. It was only wearing undergarments, but one could still tell that it was indeed the corpse of a young man. Whether it was from the texture of the muscles or the development of the body, this corpse was definitely not more than 20 years old. Throwing the corpse on the ground with a pu sound, Bai Chi Feng said to Lengleng, now that the evidence and the witness are here, do you still have anything to say, open and above board Holy Emperor Jean? Jean Mubai's body trembled, looking at the horrifying corpse in disbelief. His eyes were blank, and his body swayed a little. Do it. Bai Chi Feng waved his hand, and 6 figures soared into the sky at the same time, their ultimate moves ready to be unleashed. Suddenly, the head of the Qin family, Qin Qing Tian, who had been watching from the side, suddenly stared blankly at the corpse. Tears streamed down his face, and he let out a loud cry. Ignoring all the super experts present, he pounced forward crazily. Lifting up the corpse to take a closer look, he suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground, twitching uncontrollably. At the place where he was flipped up, on the side of his left knee, there was an obvious mole. When he was lying on the ground, only half of the mole was revealed. But now that he was flipped over, it was completely exposed. This person was the second son of the Qin family, Qin Yang. This sudden and unexpected turn of events caused everyone present to be dumbstruck for a time, and all their movements came to a halt. Jun Moxie, who was hiding in the air, also cursed inwardly. Shit. Just as they were about to kill someone, the real identity of this damn corpse was actually recognized. The heavens really did not follow one's wishes. At that time, I was only focused on the body's age and figure, and didn't even notice the minute details. Damn it, after a long time, Qin Qin Tian finally regained consciousness, crying out loud. The entire Qin family confirmed the identity of the corpse, especially after Madame Qin confirmed it on the spot, as well as tens of female servants of the Qin family. All of them agreed that this corpse was definitely not that free and natural physique disciple of Saint Emperor Chao, but the second son of the Qin family, Qin Yang. Chapter 850. Fourth chapter. Try again, and see if you can get a fifth chapter. As these maids pointed out the culprit, some of them actually revealed looks of glee, but they didn't dare to show it openly. So when Jun Dashao went out in a hurry last night, how could there be a young man similar to him among the guards? Just as he was feeling anxious, he heard the sorrowful cries of a young girl coming from one of the rooms. Looking towards the direction of the sound, he saw an almost naked scoundrel forcing a maid with a lecherous smile on his face. Jun Moxie didn't even have time to ask for the reason before he knocked the young man out with a palm and saved the girl, then carried this unlucky fellow back. Even Jun Moxie didn't expect that in his haste, he had actually done such a good deed, sending this lecherous second young master of the Qin family onto the road of no return. With this sudden turn of events, everyone, including Chao Guofeng and Zhang Mubai, were all dumbfounded. Since this corpse was the second young master of the Qin family, then where had the prodigy with the free and natural physique gone to? Taking advantage of this opportunity, Zhang Mubai recounted what had happened to him. He emphasized, if I really killed him, why would I be holding onto a piece of black cloth? Since you guys had lost me before, then with my Zhang Mubai's ability, not to mention a black robe, even if there were thousands of them, I would have long destroyed the corpse. Other than the Qin family, who among these saints of the Holy Emperor would care that the second young master of the Qin family was dead? Everyone was thinking about one thing. Where had the prodigy with the free and natural physique gone to? This was the main point. If this matter was a conspiracy, then wasn't the battle between Chao Guofeng and Zhang Mubai extremely unjust? But Zhang Mubai's side was in a terrible state. His clothes were torn and tattered, his face was bruised, and his face was disfigured. A chunk of his beard had been chopped off, and his eyes were swollen like a panda's. His lips were swollen like sausages, and 2 of his teeth had been knocked out by Qifeng. He was a classic example of a pig's head in this world. Not to mention, he also had quite a few internal injuries. Even for an ordinary person, this would be unbearable, let alone the person involved, the Holy Emperor. What a great humiliation! Chao Guofeng, Qifeng, and the rest looked at each other, not knowing what to do. Who would have thought that the 8 holy emperors, the world's top powerhouses, would be so ruthlessly tricked by someone? But at the same time, he heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. As long as that genius is not dead, no matter whose hands he falls into, he will be found one day. But Zhang Mubai was panting heavily, his eyes spitting fire as he glared at Chao Guofeng and the rest. Chao Guofeng. You son of a b***. I will not live under the same sky with you. This injustice had finally been cleared, and Saint Emperor Zhang could finally clamor in a righteous manner. After his teeth were knocked out, his words were leaking air. Zhang Mubai even had the thought of dying. He was beaten like a sandbag just now, and it was in public. And that shocking scolding was probably heard by everyone in the entire Chrysanthemum City. How was he supposed to explain this matter? I suffered this beating for nothing? He should at least give an explanation. Holy Emperor Jean cried, his tears falling like rain. In Jean Mubai's life, other than crying when he was young, he would only cry under special circumstances. That was when he was extremely wronged. And he would only cry after the grievance was cleared. Right now, Holy Emperor Jean was crying. I've lost too much. I've been wronged too much, as he thought. Jean Mubai suddenly thought of a very important matter. The corpse in front of him was fake, and he had defended his innocence. But where did the real person go? His eyeballs spun rapidly, and the more he thought, the more he felt it was possible. The black-robed corpse had just been thrown in, and Chao Guofeng and the rest came in right after. Damn it, even if they wanted to catch an adulterer, there wouldn't be such a perfect timing. Who would frame me at such a critical juncture? Other than Chao Guofeng, who else could it be? Fuck. Jean Mubai punched the ground and roared angrily. Chao Guofeng, you still have the face to call me despicable? You are the despicable one. To monopolize a free and natural physique talent as your disciple, you actually did such a thing. Ever since he knew that he had made a mistake, Chao Guofeng had been extremely embarrassed, and the anger in his stomach had long disappeared. What was left was only a guilty conscience. Especially when he saw his old friend of several hundred years, Jean Mubai, being beaten up so badly by him, he felt even more ashamed and ashamed. He wanted to say something but couldn't say anything. The only thing he could do now was to apologize to his old friend, and at the same time, teach his great-grandson well. Even if he wasn't his ideal successor, he couldn't care less. Hearing Jean Mubai's roar, he couldn't help but laugh bitterly, and said without any arrogance, "Brother Jean, what are you talking about? I know that you are unhappy in your heart, and I'll apologize to you. Later, bring your great-grandson to me, and I'll definitely groom him well." Jean Mubai leaped up in a rage, and appeared in front of Chao Guofeng in just 2 steps. He grabbed his clothes, and slanted his head to the side as he said fiercely, "Pui? You scoundrel! You dare to say that all of this wasn't set up by you? Pui! I'm really blind to have been friends with people like you for hundreds of years. Now that your conspiracy has been exposed, do you think that it'll be over just by apologizing? You still want to take my great-grandson as your disciple? You're wrong. Do you think I would dare to hand my great-grandson over to you? Who asked you to train him into a lowly person?" His saliva sprayed all over Chao Guofeng's face, and Chao Guofeng wiped it off awkwardly and shouted in a low voice, "What nonsense are you talking about? Don't lose your dignity. As the Holy Emperor, you don't even care about your own face. I'm sincerely apologizing to you. You also said that your great-grandson's life is hanging by a thread, and now you're saying this. Dignity? Face?" Jean Mubai roared in grief and indignation, "My dignity has already been thrown into the latrine by you. My face has already been wiped by you, Chao Guofeng. Now that your conspiracy has been exposed, you want to use my great-grandson to threaten me? Let me tell you clearly, even if I really die without descendants, I don't need you to save me. Chao Guofeng, quickly hand over my disciple, and we'll mind our own business from now on. Otherwise, only one of us can leave here alive today." Chao Guofeng was stunned, and he stammered, What disciple? What did you say?" Jean Mubai roared in rage, "My disciple with the free and natural physique. Chao Guofeng, you really have good methods. You knew that I was going to fight with you, but you actually made the first move, swapping the beam with the pillar. Not only did you kill the second son of the Chen family, you even smashed his head with a single slap, and shifted the blame to me. After that, you even came here to frame me, drawing everyone's attention away, but you actually hid your disciple in secret. Am I right?" Chao Guofeng stared at him, dumbfounded. He really didn't expect this person to be so quick-witted, to be able to make something that didn't even have a shadow into something so logical, and even make a false accusation, framing him instead. "Bastard! What nonsense are you spouting?" Chao Guofeng was enraged. "You and I have known each other for so many years. Am I that kind of person? Fuck off, we've known each other for so many years. Didn't this old man also know you for so many years before this? Am I that kind of person? Didn't you still humiliate this old man?" Jean Mubai's eyes were red. Chao Guofeng, Chao Guofeng, I was still feeling strange. That free and natural physique youth was staying at your place, surrounded by the 7 holy emperors, but he was still intercepted and killed. Let me ask you, in this world, who would have such mystical abilities? Ha! I'm really an idiot, he laughed mournfully. Who in this world would be able to capture a living person under the strict protection of the 7 holy emperors? I believe that even if the 9 serenities and 14 masters were here, they would definitely not be able to do so. Such an obvious flaw, and I actually didn't think of it, and even wanted to explain. But I didn't expect that this was all a good show that you, Chao Guofeng, had written and acted out yourself. All for the sake of dominating the geniuses. You all slandered me for being good at acting, but I say that the acting skills of the people from your Misty Mansion are really good. Chao Guofeng, if this old man still doesn't understand your motive, then it would really be a waste of my life. The moment Jean Mubai said this, the experts from the 3 holy lands all gave a meaningful "oh." This matter was very likely. Things were just as Jean Mubai had said. In this world, who would be able to capture a person under the strict protection of the 7 holy emperors? This was an inconceivable matter. This was an ironclad fact. Not to mention the 7 holy emperors, even if there was only one, as long as he disregarded his own life and put in all his effort to protect someone, that person would definitely be safe and sound before he died in battle. This was an expert from the Holy Emperor, and he was even being protected by the 7 holy emperors. If it was something that even the 9 serenities and 14 masters could not do, then no one else in this world would be able to do it. A bunch of nonsense. Making things up. Inverting black and white, ridiculous to the extreme. Chao Guofeng was so angry that his entire body was trembling. Even his hair and beard were trembling. Right now, he could finally understand what Jean Mubai had felt earlier. Losing his disciple was already embarrassing enough, and now, this *T was actually thrown onto his head. Jean Mubai felt that his analysis was not wrong, and even more so, he was not willing to give up and continued to clamor. Everyone tried to persuade him, but there was a hidden meaning in their words. For example, Hai Wuya said, "Brother Jean, this matter should be discussed at length. Brother Chao has always been an upright person. After a few days, he will think it through, and it won't be too late for you to discuss it then." However, Ji Qiu said, "Brother Jean, this matter cannot be rushed. It's better to take things slowly." Chapter 851. The Misty Mansion's goal was to monopolize it, and they wanted to monopolize it silently. This Chao Guofeng actually wanted to turn an already exposed prodigy into an invisible person again, and use him as the Misty Mansion's secret weapon to secretly groom? And then suddenly become famous all over the world? How could there be such a cheap thing? But now that things had developed to this stage, no matter how Chao Guofeng tried to hide, he would still bring him back to the Misty Mansion eventually. As long as he kept following him, there would come a day where he would be exposed. And one more thing. You, Jean Mubai, are heavily injured now, and are not his match. If you forcefully make a move, you will only be asking for humiliation. Bai Qifeng stood up. Lengleng said, "Holy Emperor Jean, it's our fault that we made a mistake, but don't accuse others recklessly just because you feel it's unfair. On the night of the incident, me, Boss Chao, and the rest of us were together the whole night. We can all testify for each other. Such a despicable thing, the people of the Misty Mansion really cannot do it." Testify? What's the use of you testifying? Jean Mubai had completely gone mad. Aren't you all in the same boat? The 7 of you are that prodigy's master. The 7 of you came from the same place, colluding together, and saying that you want to testify for each other? Don't forget, when you guys were discussing about accepting a disciple together, I was watching and listening at the side. Bai Qifeng, do you fucking think that we are all idiots? You said that even I don't believe what I said just now. Let me ask you in return, now that you're saying that this is evidence, do you believe it yourself? Truly shameless. Chao Guofeng and Bai Qifeng were instantly enraged. Chao Guofeng was still feeling remorseful for wrongly accusing his old friend, but now, that remorseful feeling had completely disappeared, and the only thing left in his heart was endless anger. Lengling said, "Whether you believe it or not is your own business. Anyway, this is the truth, we didn't do it. Jean Mubai, Holy Emperor Jean, I'm really sorry for what happened today. The mountain is high and the river is long. There will be a day when the truth will come to light. You can do whatever you want now, us brothers will take our leave. Farewell." Chao Guofeng, you make it sound so easy. You've humiliated this old man so much, and now that your act has been seen through by us, you want to leave just like that? How can there be such a cheap thing in this world? Jean Mubai said angrily, "You can leave if you want, but leave your head here. Or, leave me my disciple." Chao Guofeng, do as you see fit. I'll leave your leg behind. Bai Chi Feng spat disdainfully and said, "Jean Mubai, do you still know how high the sky is and how thick the earth is? A piece of trash like you actually wants to keep our boss Chao's head? Dream on. Is it because those few blows just now didn't satisfy you? You still want to get beaten up?" At this point, both sides had completely fallen out. So Jean Mubai's tone was especially ruthless and did not leave any leeway. And Bai Chi Feng's words were even sharper and unkind, poking at Jean Mubai's scars with every word. Chao Guofeng let out a long sigh and turned around. "Enough nonsense, let's go." He walked out first. Bai Chi Feng laughed coldly and took a few steps back facing the people from the 3 Holy Lands. Facing Jean Mubai, he laughed mockingly and even stretched out his index finger, shaking it lightly. "Jean Mubai, you should know your limits in everything. Leave us behind? You're not worthy." Only then did he turn around and leave. The other 5 Saint Emperors also revealed looks of disdain. They looked coldly and cruelly at Jean Mubai before leaving in a single file. Jean Mubai was so angered by Bai Chi Feng's words that his eyes turned black, and he almost couldn't breathe. After a long while, he finally managed to catch his breath. After a violent coughing fit, he started cursing crazily. The 7 generations of female relatives of the Holy Emperor in the Misty Mansion were instantly in big trouble. The surrounding people all had strange expressions on their faces. They all felt that their horizons and ears had been broadened. Cursing in the streets, everyone present had heard it before. No matter how ugly it was, they had all experienced it, but this Holy Emperor cursing in the streets, who had ever heard it before? This was the first time this had ever happened. Chen Qing Tian watched with hatred as the people from the Misty Mansion left, his eyes spitting fire. In his heart, he naturally believed Jean Mubai's judgment. These few holy emperors from the Misty Mansion had killed his own son to deceive the heavens. But just now, due to Chao Guofeng and the rest's unparalleled skills, he did not dare to say anything. Now that they had left, he walked forward angrily and knelt in front of Jean Mubai. Before he said anything, his tears were already falling like rain. "Holy Emperor Jean, my own son died so innocently in the hands of the people from the Misty Mansion. You must uphold justice for me, ah." At this moment, Jean Mubai was extremely embarrassed and furious. He had lost half of his rationality. Hearing that, he sent Chen Qing Tian flying with a kick and scolded, "Fuck off. Go fuck off. This daddy will uphold justice for you, but who will uphold justice for this daddy? Scram. Don't bother me. If you dare to speak again and anger this daddy, today, your entire Chen family will be annihilated." Chen Qing Tian's body flew up like a rubber ball. In midair, he was already feeling extremely frustrated, as though he was about to die. "You guys came here, ate my food, stayed in my place, took my things, used my things, played with my things, and even ordered my entire family around like slaves. The slightest bit of disobedience and you'll be scolded. Now that my son has been killed, I'm begging you to uphold justice, but you still want to treat me like this. Where is the justice? Where is the justice?" His vision darkened, and at the same time, the part of his chest that was kicked was unbearably painful. His internal organs felt like they were being torn apart. With a watch sound, he spat out a mouthful of blood, falling to the ground with a thud, rolling a few times before fainting. For such a minor character to faint, it was a trivial matter that couldn't be any more trivial. Even if he really died, so what? The people from the three Holy Lands saw that the farce had ended and quickly dispersed. Jean Mubai angrily returned to his room and sat down to recuperate. But the more he thought about it, the angrier he got. His head felt like it was about to explode, and he just couldn't calm himself down. All the way until noon he still hadn't calmed down. Angrily, he drank 2 mouthfuls of water and smashed the water bottle away. The people from the Misty Mansion moved out of the Chen residence that morning and stayed in an inn in the city. Of course, Hai Wuya and He Jiqiu from the three Holy Lands accompanied them the entire time. These two people had received benefits from Jean Mubai, so they naturally had to accompany and monitor them. Chao Guofeng and the rest were so depressed that they wanted to commit suicide. No matter what, they were in the wrong for today's matter, but they couldn't bear to offend these two people again. They could only turn a blind eye and pretend that they were two invisible people. Hai Wuya and He Jiqiu, who had gained nothing, shamelessly stayed in the inn as well. Although the three Holy Lands seemed to be fighting each other openly and covertly on the surface, once one reached the level of the Holy Emperor, they would understand that the three Holy Lands were actually one big family. They were bound together for good or bad. Chao Guofeng and Bai Qifeng had insulted the Hermitage's Jean Mubai in front of them, which was equivalent to indirectly insulting the illusory Blood Sea and Supreme Golden City. How could the two of them not be furious? The two of them had already decided that even if it wasn't for Jean Mubai, they would still find that free and natural physique prodigy. At that time, if Chao Guofeng and the rest still didn't admit to their wrongdoings, they would rather ask their old ancestors to come out and snatch this rare talent back. This was no longer just a matter of who the free and natural physique prodigy belonged to. This was a matter of the three Holy Lands' face. Your Misty and Misty Mansion's way of doing things was a little too arrogant, practically treating the Holy Emperor of the three Holy Lands like a fool. How could there be such a good thing? Now, in their hearts, they were certain that Chao Guofeng was trying to monopolize that young genius, and he was trying to hide the truth from them. At that time, as long as we find that person, let's see what you, Chao Guofeng, have to say. You can humiliate the three Holy Lands until they have no way to retaliate. We can similarly force you to commit suicide. As long as the witnesses and evidence are present, even if you, Chao Guofeng, are the Holy Emperor, you will still have to give us compensation and an explanation. At that time, this explanation would be Chao Guofeng's life. In the blink of an eye, it was night time. Jean Mubai finally calmed down and began to circulate his Xian Qi to treat his injuries. Speaking of which, although his external injuries looked rather pitiful, they were only superficial injuries. With the shocking recovery ability of a saint, a single cycle of rest would be enough to recover instantly. Instead, it was the internal injuries caused by Chao Guofeng's palms that were the real injuries, and he would need to recuperate for a few days. Today, the Chen family's attitude had obviously turned cold, but Jean Mubai did not take it to heart. In his eyes, this sort of small worldly family was not worth a mention. If he really felt unhappy one day, he could just wipe them out with a flip of his hand. Deep into the night, Jean Mubai finished his work. Feeling the internal injuries in his body once again, he sighed hatefully. This Chao Guofeng was really ruthless. Just at this time, the sound of the wind outside suddenly sounded out, but it turned into a sinister feeling. Jean Mubai's brows furrowed. Lengling said, "Which expert has arrived? Please come in and have a chat." There was a low laugh, and a black figure entered the room with a swoosh. The doors and windows were all closed, but this person had inexplicably entered the room and leisurely paced 2 steps in front of Jean Mubai. This person was tall, dressed in black, and there was a sinister black aura rising from his body. It was so dark that his entire person seemed like an illusory shadow and did not feel real at all. Although this person was dressed in black, his face was not covered. However, Jean Mubai could feel that his face was hazy, and no matter how hard he tried, he could not see what this person looked like. This person's entire appearance was like that of an evil spirit that had suddenly appeared in the human world under the cover of the night. 9 serenities and 14 masters? It's you. It's actually you. Jean Mubai was shocked, and he could not help but feel a chill on his back. To be able to recognize me in an instant, you have good eyesight. This person's tone also carried an unusually cold and sinister tone. Although he spoke, his mouth did not seem to have moved at all. He looked at Jean Mubai, and in his eyes, his pupils strangely turned completely white, then completely black, and finally returned to the pupils of a normal person. Secretly, this 9-14th young master was laughing so hard that his intestines were about to break. How was this 9 serenities and 14 masters? It was clearly Jun Dashao who had come to play tricks again. And this time, it was the start of the biggest battle between him and the 3 Holy Lands. Among them, the most important character was this person that he was disguised as the 9 serenities and 14 masters. Jean Mubai's entire body was covered in cold sweat. Chapter 852. Although Jean Mubai knew that the 9-14th young master's injuries were extremely severe, and the 9-14th young master might not have the strength to kill him, but as the saying goes, a person's reputation is like a tree's shadow. How could he not be shocked? Holy Emperor Jean, right? 9 serenities and 14 masters' tone carried a hint of disdain and arrogance. It was as if he was giving Jean Mubai a lot of face by talking to Jean Mubai. Jean Mubai was originally 80% sure that this person was 9 serenities and 14 masters, but now that he spoke, this 80% certainty suddenly became 100%. Completely certain. Other than that lunatic, no one else in the world would speak in such a tone. After all, he was facing the Holy Emperor. Jean Mubai's mood immediately stabilized. Knowing that the situation could not get any worse, Jean Mubai calmed down. He slowly stood up and smiled. I didn't know that you were coming. Forgive me for not coming out to greet you. Mubai fought with someone today and was injured. It's a little indecent. I've let you laugh at me. 9 serenities and 14 masters was far more famous than him, so it was natural for him to call him senior. Also, 9 serenities and 14 masters was known for their extraordinary strength. They were also known for their decisiveness and straightforwardness. If he was really here to kill him, he would have already killed him without saying a word. Since he had not made a move yet, his original intention was definitely not to kill him. As long as he did not take the initiative to provoke this peerless villain, he should be able to avoid a fight. Then there was no need to be overly nervous and ruin his identity for nothing. Besides, it had only been a month since this guy was seriously injured. He should not have recovered so quickly. Even if he was still not his opponent, it should not be a problem for him to resist for a while until reinforcements arrived. With this in mind, Jean Mubai felt reassured. As long as his safety was guaranteed, everything else was negotiable. Jean Mubai had already made up his mind. In an instant, he regained the graceful bearing of a strong holy emperor. At least, he was no longer trembling with fear like before. However, anyone with a discerning eye would be able to see that Jean Mubai was putting on a strong front. In fact, there was nothing wrong with this. In this world, when faced with such a peerless villain alone, how many people would not be afraid? Even young Master Jun might not have been completely free of anxiety on that day. Yes, little Jean, if you weren't injured today, I wouldn't have come, the 9 serenities and 14 masters said disdainfully. But what does senior mean by that? Jean Mubai felt a little strange when he heard this. This form of address from the 9 serenities and 14 masters made Jean Mubai not know whether to laugh or cry. Little Jean? Little Jean, seemed to be more than 700 years old. However, there were rumors in the 3 Holy Lands that calling himself this young master was the catchphrase of the 9 serenities and 14 masters. So, it was appropriate for this peerless villain who was at least 800 years old to call himself Little Jean. Kikik? Jean Mubai, that day in the Tian Fa forest, you attacked with your sword and injured my heart and lungs. I was almost doomed. You were really impressive. The 9 serenities and 14 masters laughed strangely and said with a cold, murderous intent. This sentence was something that could not be said unless it was personally experienced. Jean Mubai smiled faintly and said, Senior, what are you saying? Not to mention that day, even now, you and I are still enemies. Naturally, We will do anything in a battle. Mubai only hates that my Xian cultivation is too shallow, and I can't kill you with one strike. I missed such a great opportunity. Every night I dream of it and I still regret it." The 9 serenities and 14 masters snorted and said, "You are very bold. Facing this young master, you actually dare to speak sarcastically? Are you really not afraid of death?" Jean Mubai laughed and said, "I believe that as long as one is human, they will be afraid of death. But if Senior really wants to kill me, regardless of whether I am sarcastic or afraid of death, do you think that will stop Senior from killing me?" The 9 serenities and 14 masters was startled. Then he laughed strangely. The black mist surrounding him rose and surged. He shouted, "Well said, Jean Mubai. With your state of mind and bearing, you are worthy of the title of the Holy Emperor." He paused and said, "But how do you know that I am not here to kill you? Or, do you really think that I can't kill you?" When Jean Mubai heard this, he was startled. The 9 serenities and 14 masters who were just in front of him suddenly disappeared. At the same time, there was a sharp sound of wind breaking behind him, as if a sharp blade was cutting through the air. Jean Mubai was shocked. His whole body rushed out, and at the same time, his body suddenly became as thin as a piece of paper. He fell to the ground, but he still felt a stabbing pain in his back. It was obvious that he had been stabbed by some kind of weapon. But under his dodging and dealing with it with all his might, it was only a flesh wound. This was indeed the spiritual sense of an expert of the Holy Emperor. Although Jean Mubai thought that he was lucky, he did not dare to be careless. He suddenly turned around, and in the blink of an eye he had used 7 or 8 superb techniques, and even changed his body form more than 10 times. He was running for his life with all his might. However, after that sudden attack, the 9 serenities and 14 masters obviously did not continue to attack. Jean Mubai calmed down a little, but he was also very puzzled. Since both sides had already started fighting, why did the murderer not continue to chase after him? Finally, he turned around and looked at the madman in front of him. He also suppressed the long cry for help that he had prepared. After all, if he cried for help, it would definitely anger the madman. He would decide what to do next after seeing what the madman was going to do. He saw that the 9 serenities and 14 masters was holding an abnormally narrow strange blade in his hand. He was calmly scraping it on his left hand. He did not even look at Jean Mubai. 9 serenities frost blade. Laughing loudly, the 9 nether 14th young master lowered his head and said in a seemingly happy manner, "That day, you had a part in causing me to suffer heavy injuries that I have yet to recover from. Today, I've come to settle the score with you and settle the enmity. But seeing that you're still a straightforward and upright person, this young master's arrival today seems a little overbearing and unfair. Forget it, this young master has always fought against the many. If I kill you today, I'm sure you won't be satisfied in your heart, so I'll let you live for a few more days. Just now, I just wanted to tell you that if I really want to take your life, you do not have much time left." As soon as the laughter stopped, the rolling mist on the body of the 9 serenities and 14 masters suddenly became thicker. It became thicker, and gradually, it became so thick that it became blurry. Then, with a whoosh, it disappeared completely. Even the body of the 9 serenities and 14 masters disappeared without a trace. All the doors and windows were still closed. Only Jean Mubai was left in the room. Even the furnishings in the room were untouched. There was no trace of anyone coming in. From the beginning to the end, it was as if he had just had a dream. What a terrible nightmare. If Jean Mubai had died just now, this would be the standard murder in the secret chamber incident. Jean Mubai, who was still in a state of shock, stood there blankly for a while. Then he slowly moved his almost stiff body to a chair and sat down. After staring blankly for a while, he suddenly started sweating profusely. That was close. Ever since the sudden appearance of the 9 serenities and 14 masters, Jean Mubai seemed to be calm. In fact, his heart was already in a mess. He could not even force himself to calm down. Back then, he and the other 20 Holy Emperor worked together to ambush the 9 serenities and 14 masters, who had just broken through the seal and only retained 30% to 20% of his power at his peak. There were casualties and injuries. Now that the opponent had come to find him alone, how could he be any better? Facing such a peerless villain, Jean Mubai did not even dare to call for reinforcements loudly. He was afraid that he would provoke the opponent. With a fearless spirit, Jean Mubai forced himself to ignore life and death and spoke with assurance. Even so, the moment the opponent made his move, Jean Mubai was still scared out of his wits. His reaction at that moment was purely instinctive, a defensive instinct that stemmed from inertia. However, the reason he did not die just now was not because his reaction was amazing. It was just that the opponent did not want to kill him. However, the strangest thing was that the villain only said a few words, lightly stabbed him, and left. But why did he not kill me? Since he did not want to kill me, why did he come? Could it be that what he had said was pure nonsense? What did he mean? It had been some time since the villain left. With the lunatic's lightness skill, he should have gone far by now. However, the lingering fear in Jean Mubai began to surge like the rising tide of the sea. It surged endlessly, wave after wave. His face turned pale in an instant. He sat on the chair in a daze, his body trembling slightly. There was only one thought left in his mind. Why? After a long time, the cold sweat on Jean Mubai's body finally stopped gushing out. He calmed himself down and shouted, "Someone come! Someone come!" He didn't notice that his voice was extremely hoarse. The fake 9 Serenities and 14 Masters used the yin-yang escape to burrow into the ground and out of Jean Mubai's room. He quickly disappeared into thin air and left the Chen family's mansion in the blink of an eye. Jun Dushao stopped at a quiet corner and appeared. He could not help but wipe the cold sweat off his body. He screamed in his heart. Why? How could Jun Moxie not want to kill Jean Mubai? With such a deep hatred, as long as it was possible, he was not willing to let Jean Mubai live for another second. However, the problem was that he was, after all, a fake 9 Serenities and 14 Masters. He was not the real 9 Serenities and 14 Masters. It was not that he did not want to kill him, but he could not. He could not kill him. With his current strength, he still could not kill Jean Mubai, even if Jean Mubai had internal injuries and was not at his full strength. Although Jean Mubai was scared out of his wits by the sudden arrival of the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters, he was still the Holy Emperor. He still had the instincts of a Holy Emperor. And because of this, when faced with the sudden attack of Jean Mubai, he immediately gathered all the Xian energy in his body to form a defense. Jun Moxie wielded the 9 Serenities Frost Blade and slashed with 70% of his strength, but he could not break through his Xian energy defense. However, it only managed to leave a small wound on his body that was 1 centimeter deep. This kind of small wound, to the Holy Emperor, would not affect him much even if he stabbed him 1,000 times. Therefore, Jun Moxie made a prompt decision and immediately retreated. Chapter 853. The second update. Only these 2 updates today. Something delayed me for the entire afternoon. Tomorrow is the Lantern Festival. The update may be late. If he were to forcefully kill him and his identity was exposed by the other party, then it would be really bad, and the matter would be over. Jun Moxie only had one real purpose for this trip, and that was to release a piece of news. The 9 Serenities and 14 Masters was in Chrysanthemum City. If he could successfully kill Jean Mubai, that would naturally be the best. The unique scars on the corpse were caused by the 9 Serenities Frost Blade, which was equivalent to proving this point. Although the plan was not completed, the effect would be the same if Jean Mubai personally announced this matter, or even better. However, the defense of the Holy Emperor really opened Jun Moxie's eyes. It was really too valiant. He had concentrated 70% of his strength to launch a sneak attack. Not to mention others, he believed that even an ordinary saint would most likely die from the sword. But against the Holy Emperor, it was almost completely ineffective, especially when the Holy Emperor himself had internal injuries and was not at full strength. The astonishing gap between a saint and a Holy Emperor could be seen clearly. Recalling the astonishing strength of the 9 serenities and 14 masters that day when they killed the Holy Emperor, Jun Dushao somewhat dejectedly sighed. Compared to the top experts of this world, the gap is still too big. Last time in the snowy mountains, I had successfully broken through to the 2nd level of the Venerable Realm. After this period of accumulation, although I had broken through to the 5th level of the Hongjun Pagoda, my own strength did not seem to have made much progress, and only changed to a completely new form. Up until now, I was only at the 3rd level of the Venerable Realm. And that Zhan Mubai was a genuine 2nd level Holy Emperor, and I was more than 10 levels below him. If I could kill him, that would be really strange. Jun Moxie stood up and lightly exhaled. Since Zhan Mubai had already received the news, the next step would be for Chao Guofeng and Hai Wuya. However, they had moved out of the Chun family and stayed in the same inn, which gave him less space to move around. Jun Moxie's figure flashed in the night. No matter what, since the plan had been officially launched, he had to carry it out to the end. Taking advantage of the fact that everyone was very excited tonight, how could he not add fuel to the fire? Since the 9 serenities and 14 masters had come to Chrysanthemum City, how could he face himself if he didn't find something for him to do? In the midst of flying, Jun Moxie suddenly thought of something. The Chun clan had recognized the corpse. Didn't that mean that there was a possibility that he, the prodigy with the free and natural physique, could be used in the future? Gagaga, this young master is still thinking of ways to make up for this gap. Heaven is really following my wishes. As he thought about it, Jun Moxie smiled lecherously. It was as if he could see the rainbow god tree in the misty mansion waving at him, and that heavenly Saint Lotus Pond, 9-segment exquisite lotus. If any woman happened to see that smile on young Master Jun's face, not to mention a beautiful woman, even a 70 or 80-year-old lady would immediately hide as far away as possible. They had never seen such a coquettish person. What a slut! In the inn, Chao Guofeng by Chi Feng and the rest were gathered in a room, their brows furrowed and their hearts filled with doubt. If that person is not Zhan Mubai, who could it be? Although Zhan Mubai's words are detestable, they are not without reason. In this world, there are indeed not many people who can kidnap someone under our watch. Chao Guofeng furrowed his brows, unable to understand. Hai Wuya is not that tall, He Zhiqiu is a little fat, and the other holy emperors of the 3 holy lands have only just advanced to the holy emperor realm. There's no way they could hide from our divine sense and sneak into the small courtyard. Who could it be? Boss Chao, don't judge Zhan Mubai just by looking at his aggrieved face. I still firmly believe that this matter has something to do with Zhan Mubai or the 3 holy lands. Bai Chi Feng stood and said coldly. No matter where this person was, he would never sit down. And his temper was terrible to the extreme. The moment he spoke, it was like a firecracker. That day in the Tian Fa forest, it was precisely a single sentence from him that caused the 5 factions to completely collapse. But those who knew him well knew that this was how this fellow spoke. He was born with a face that deserved a beating, and a temper that deserved a beating. If there came a day when he spoke and no one got angry, that would be strange. What do you mean by that? Chao Guofeng raised his brows. The reason is very simple. The potential of the free and natural physique, you and I know it, and Zhan Mubai also knows it. No matter what, he will not give up. Bai Chi Feng laughed coldly. A free and natural physique without any foundation, this is equivalent to the greatest treasure. Zhan Mubai is not stupid, and I believe that the others are not fools either. No matter which faction of the 3 holy lands obtains this person, it can be predicted that in the next 200 to 300 years, the faction that obtains this person will be able to completely suppress the other 2 factions, and can even use this chance to merge the 3 holy lands into one. As Bai Chi Feng spoke till here, the other 6 holy emperors all nodded in agreement. Since that's the case, after Hai Wuya and He Zhiqiu find out about this matter, will they really keep their promise? Snatch this person over and give him to Zhan Mubai? Just for a few pieces of trash. If it were you guys, would you be willing? Bai Chi Feng Lengleng smiled. Of course not. Other than Chao Guofeng, who was still considering, the other 5 shook their heads in unison. Since you guys are also not willing, what makes you think that Hai Wuya and He Jiqiu are willing to do that? Could it be that Zhan Mubai is their biological father? So what if their physiques don't match? Is it more difficult for us to temporarily change our physiques than eating and drinking? It's just that we respect our identities, and are not willing to do it, and even more so feel disdain to do it. Bai Qi Feng chuckled coldly, his voice slightly louder. Softer. Chao Guofeng hurriedly shouted. He could tell that this sworn brother of his was already extremely angry at Hai Wuya and He Jiqiu for following and supervising them all the way. Right now, he was looking for trouble, wanting to teach those two a lesson as well. Chao Guofeng had already set up his qi field. As long as he didn't use too much force, no one outside would be able to hear him. Even if the people outside were experts of the Holy Emperor, it was no exception. But Bai Qi Feng's last sentence was purposely raised his voice, and he even used Xian Qi. If those two people were paying attention to the commotion here, they would definitely be able to hear this sentence. With regards to the dignity of the two saint emperors, who were so high up that they could not be blasphemed, this sentence was enough to start a war, a battle to the death that would not end until one side was dead. In the room next door, following Bai Qi Feng's words, He Jiqiu snorted angrily and was about to explode. Although Hai Wuya's face was also filled with anger, he still pulled He Jiqiu back. On what basis? These people from the Misty Mansion are really too much. They know that we are here, but they still slander us like this. This sentence is clearly a provocation. It's fine if you don't want to do anything, but are you going to pull me in as a coward as well? He Jiqiu roared angrily. Boldi, put the big picture first. The Misty Mansion can ignore the big picture, because they have a lot of escape routes. They just need to hide in the Misty Mansion, and even the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters won't be able to get in. But can we do it? The situation is stronger than us, so we have to endure it no matter what. Hai Wuya's eyes were deep, and his words were filled with righteousness, but there was a cold sneer on his lips. One day I will make these old fools pay the price. He Jiqiu spat out hatefully and sat down again. Brother Bai, since they are not willing to let go, why did they agree to help? One of the short Holy Emperor asked in confusion. They are probably just trying to reap the benefits. If they directly reject that old man Zhan's request, and even propose to compete for the ownership of that child, wouldn't their previous positions be on opposing sides, and it would be even harder for them to fight against us? Instead, they would pretend to agree, and that would make things easier for them. Bai Qi Feng's voice was still very loud. Who can't see through this little bit of scheming? Even a 5 to 6-year-old kid can see with his, but that it's just that old man Zhan is blinded by greed. To think that those two bastards actually thought that their plan was some peerless plan, what a joke. This Hai Wuya and He Jiqiu have really shown this old man what a real fool is. The breathing of the two people next door became more and more rapid, and their breathing became heavier and heavier. Their bodies were trembling uncontrollably. Their teeth were clenched so tightly that they almost shattered. There is no point in continuing to make wild guesses now. What we are discussing now is, who was the one who kidnapped the child, and not Hai Wuya and He Jiqiu's positions? Bai Qi Feng, you are putting the cart before the horse. You must know that now is not the time for you to be willful. Hai Wuya and He Jiqiu's positions may be questionable, but with their strength, it is still difficult for them to come and go as they please in front of us. I believe that the person that night was not either of them. Chao Guofeng snorted and quickly interrupted. If he allowed Bai Qi Feng to continue speaking without restraint, the entire Chrysanthemum City would probably fly into the sky tonight. Those two fellows indeed do not have such methods, but that does not mean that they can completely escape responsibility. Although we only have a few people here, the 3 Holy Lands might not have the same. Bai Qi Feng said, you must know that up until now, even when dealing with the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters in the Tian Fa Forest, the 3 Holy Lands only sent out 3 second-level Holy Emperors each. As for the 3rd and 4th level Holy Emperor, not a single one of them was sent out. The strength that they have gathered is not small, but it may not be that they do not have the intention of borrowing our Misty Mansion's strength. The biggest possibility is that they hope that the experts of our Misty Mansion will perish together with the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters, so that they can reap the benefits. On this point, it was all thanks to Boss Chow's far-sighted planning that he came up with a unified arrangement. Only then did they avoid the awkward situation of fighting on their own. Otherwise, the 3 Holy Lands would definitely be watching from the side and reaping the benefits. Hai Wuya and Hiji Chiu looked at each other. This egomaniac was right on this point. Chapter 854. Mockery flashed in by Qi Feng's eyes. Although allowing a young man to enter the Heaven Saint Palace as a guardian is an unprecedented matter, this young man has the free and natural physique that has never been seen before. If we can obtain this person, the Heaven Saint Palace will definitely be willing to open it once. I believe there is no doubt about this. Next door, Hai Wuya and Hiji Chiu looked at each other in shock. Although this by Qi Feng was arrogant, but his analysis was not wrong at all. The two of them really did have this idea. Following that, they could no longer hear the conversation from the other side. Obviously, Bai Qi Feng saw that his provocation was futile and obediently lowered his voice. After all, many of the contents of the conversation were secrets of the Misty Mansion and could not be known by the people of the 3 Holy Lands. Under the cover of Chao Guofeng's powerful aura, Hai Wuya and Hiji Chiu's cultivation were far inferior to this 3rd-level Holy Emperor, so they could no longer hear the conversation. What happened next is even easier to deduce. Although Hai Wuya and Hiji Chiu agreed to Zhan Mubai on the surface, they must have also reported it to Heaven Saint Palace. Bai Qi Feng chuckled. Boss Chow, as long as the people from the 3 Holy Lands are not limited to these people, or the people from the Heaven Saint Palace, then this deduction is completely valid. Even if it's not 100%, there's still a 70 to 80% chance. In the end, the experts from Heaven Saint Palace made their move and kidnapped that kid. And it is very likely that they sent 2 experts at once. One of them left in another direction, and the other brought the 2nd son of the Chen family to lure us away. At the most crucial moment, he killed us with a single palm strike, causing our Misty Illusory Manor to lose all hope. Even if the seniors of the Misty Illusory Manor came later, they could just say that the person was already dead and push the blame away. Makes sense? Chao Guofeng said. At first, he thought that the person's head had been smashed to pieces, and he wouldn't be able to recognize it anymore. Even if Zhan Mubai had to take the blame, or even sacrifice Zhan Mubai to settle this matter, it would be worth it as long as he could save the child. However, the head of the Qin family accidentally recognized the real identity of the corpse with a birthmark. This matter must have disrupted their plan and exposed a loophole, allowing us to deduce the truth. Although he said that he had deduced the truth, his brows furrowed even tighter. If that's the case, then I'm afraid I really won't be able to obtain this disciple of mine. It's not impossible to snatch it back. Bai Qi Feng saw through Chao Guofeng's concerns and chuckled. How can our disciple be so easily snatched away by them? There might be a way to solve this problem. What's the plan? Everyone asked. Our Misty Mansion has always been an independent entity, unlike the 3 great Holy Lands, where there are potential conflicts of interest between us. As long as we report the situation and ask the manor head to come out and mediate, we can get this disciple back. At that time, we can ask the manor head to take this disciple under his wing. You guys also know that the manor head won't care about this. As long as this person is in the Misty Mansion, he doesn't care who he is under. As long as he belongs to the Misty Mansion, there's no problem. Even if the manor head also takes a liking to this child, it's fine to let the child have another master. It's better than letting the child be covered in dust or become an enemy. That's a good idea. Chao Guofeng furrowed his brows and carefully considered the feasibility of this matter. But this way, the Misty Mansion and the 3 great Holy Lands will definitely have conflicts. But, from today onwards, the conflict between the 2 can no longer be resolved. Even if we offend them again, it's not a big deal. Besides, it's easy to talk things through between the seniors. Furthermore, Boss Chow had been shouldering all the responsibilities of the Misty Illusory Manor all these years. He had put in a lot of hard work, and the manor lord had to give him some face. Otherwise, wouldn't everyone's hearts turn cold? Not to mention, if that child really falls into the hands of the three great holy lands, when he grows up in the future, there's a high possibility that he'll become a huge enemy of our Misty Mansion. Chao Guifeng's eyes lit up as he listened. Finally, he clapped his hands and said, "That's right, it's indeed so. Chi Feng, your brain is still the quickest. Just now, this old man was so worried that I couldn't eat." Bai Chi Feng laughed and said, "Boss, you're also like old Jean, confused by the situation. It's because you care too much that you can't see through the complicated situation. But I'm different. You guys also know that I've always been a simple-minded person." Everyone laughed together. Everyone felt much more relaxed, and hope was reignited in their hearts towards taking back this free and natural physique disciple. Everyone started to discuss the direction of the plan, how to avoid the three great holy lands, and how to report the situation to the manor head as soon as possible. The volume of their conversation naturally became softer and softer. These could all be considered true secrets. If outsiders heard it, it would spoil the entire plan. Although the two holy emperors next door had gathered all their strength and used their 5 senses to the maximum, they still couldn't hear anything. They could only sigh helplessly. Although the 7 holy emperors were discussing together, Bai Chi Feng had something else on his mind. Although he didn't say it out loud, he was feeling very aggrieved in his heart. Such a rare and good disciple was lost just like that. Although I gave that Jean Mubai a good beating after the matter and vented a lot of my frustrations, judging from the current situation, that Jean Mubai is actually also a victim. Those 2 main culprits, Hai Wuya and He Jiqiu, are actually following us here to spy on us, and we can't do anything about it. What is going on? But it's too aggrieving. If we can't retaliate, how are we going to vent this anger? If we really swallow this anger, wouldn't it make them think that the people of the Misty Mansion are too easy to bully? Although Boss Chow's heart was filled with anger, he was an experienced and prudent person. He wasn't willing to really shed all pretense of cordiality and cause a huge ruckus. If this continued, how was he going to vent this anger? Bai Chi Feng's eyes flickered as he lowered his head. He secretly made up his mind. Didn't they admit that they had received benefits from Jean Mubai? In a while, this holy emperor will make sure that all their efforts are in vain. Just at this moment, Jun Dashao slowly appeared in the air, quietly like a flying cotton as he landed in the inn. He did not land directly on the roof, but stopped in midair when there was still some distance between him and the roof. These were all holy emperor experts. Although he was currently in the state of yin-yang escape, if he landed directly on the roof, as long as he caused the slightest abnormality in the airflow, he might be discovered. He believed that the few holy emperors in the Misty Mansion would definitely be on high alert, paying attention to any traces. If he was really accidentally discovered by them, that would be terrible, going for wool and coming home shorn. It was better to avoid any possibility of accidents. It was better to be safe than sorry. With all the precautions prepared, Jun Moxie no longer hesitated and threw out his divine sense. Yes, he threw it out. According to the trajectory of the divine sense, wasn't it just throwing it out? Young Master Jun first commanded his spirit sense to soar into the sky. Then, he scattered his spirit sense in midair and silently covered the entire inn. By the time it was about to land on the inn, the countless spirit senses had already formed a gigantic net, enveloping the entire inn. There was absolutely no omission. This was Jun Moxie's unique technique. In fact, it seemed that only the art of unlocking heaven's fortune could create such a powerful divine sense function that could not be detected by others. Even the experts of the Holy Emperor were no exception. Jun Moxie's divine sense had silently covered the entire area and had locked onto the 2 rooms in an instant. He could not help but be a little surprised. Could it be that so many experts of the Holy Emperor were actually sleeping in the same bunk? After quietly checking, he found out that the people in the Misty Mansion were having a meeting, and the people from the Holy Land were waiting for an opportunity to eavesdrop next door. Seeing that both sides were the world's top experts, but were acting so sneakily, Jun Dashao almost fainted for a moment. These few families seemed to have cooperated sincerely for hundreds of years, and finally, with just a few moves, they had finally reached the point where they did not trust each other at all. This made Jun Moxie think of a famous saying, "There is no such thing as loyalty." The reason for loyalty is because the bargaining chips for betrayal are not enough. In the face of an absolute divergence of interests, even a deep friendship that had lasted for hundreds of years would still crumble in the face of such a divergence of interests. Of course, the long-term discord between their hearts was also a considerable part of the reason. Although today's incident also played a big part, in the final analysis, the Holy Land and the Misty Mansion were afraid of each other, and that was the real deep reason for the rupture. Jun Moxie's eyes turned and silently floated into one of the empty rooms. As long as he was in the magical state of the yin-yang escape, as long as he did not do anything too extreme, no one would be able to detect him, even the experts of the Holy Emperor were no exception. The 7 Holy Emperors of the Misty Mansion gathered in the middle room for a meeting, while Hai Wuya and Hijichio from the Holy Land were eavesdropping in the room on the right. This meant that the rooms on the left were the rooms where the rest of the people of the Misty Mansion lived. Jun Moxie counted and found that there were exactly 6 empty rooms, while on the right, there was only 1 empty room. Apart from these 9 rooms, the other rooms were occupied by people who had nothing to do with them. With a slight sweep of his divine sense, he could already distinguish it. The room that Jun Moxie entered was the room of Hijichio from the 3 Great Supreme Golden City. Hijichio's personality was quite scholarly, and he often sighed, "Life is a big dream, and the affairs of the world are always cold in autumn." It was full of melancholy, like a sentimental poet. Before he became the Holy Emperor, he was called Autumn Supreme, then Autumn Supreme. But when he reached the level of the Holy Emperor, he was called Holy Emperor Jichio. Hidang's golden wind drifted leaves, and the world was full of autumn. Autumn wind sword, autumn wind palm, autumn wind leg, and autumn divine art. Autumn wind leg moves the universe, autumn wind palm strikes out the worries of ghosts and gods. Autumn divine art soars the universe, autumn wind sword howls the world. Once it moves, the world will be filled with the sorrow of autumn. This was Hijichio's signature skill. The unique skill of the power of heaven and earth that he comprehended was 10,000 miles of sorrow of autumn. The moment Jun Moxie entered the room, he already knew whose room it was. Because, as long as it was a room that Hijichio had stayed in, there would naturally be a sense of desolation and sorrow. As long as someone entered this room, they would feel that the world was lost, and life was boring, like water flowing east, unable to return. Jun Moxie thought, "If this guy changed his room every day, I reckon that all the inns in the world would have to close down. Who in the world would be willing to stay in such a room that one could not help but feel sad and full of sorrow the moment they entered? What kind of person was this? He was a real weirdo. In for a penny, in for a pound." Jun Moxie casually swept the long and narrow luggage that Hijichio had placed at the head of the bed into the Hongjun Pagoda. No matter what, the Holy Emperor's luggage must have some value. Jun Dushao felt that he would definitely make a profit, even though he did not care about these small things, but no matter what, he had to take advantage first. Wouldn't he be an idiot if he didn't take advantage of a ready-made advantage? It was really too coincidental. Just as Jun Dushao succeeded, a small sound suddenly rang out. Jun Moxie couldn't help but be shocked. Weren't these 2 discussing in the room next door? Could it be that they didn't need to discuss after eavesdropping? I've already been careful enough. Could it be that I've still been discovered? He could only hold his breath and hide himself in the corner of the room. The window opened silently. Jun Moxie was secretly surprised. This Holy Emperor Jichio actually doesn't like to take the normal route, and even wants to enter my room through the window. He is indeed a weirdo. Just as he was thinking, a figure flashed, and another person appeared silently in the room. When Jun Moxie saw this, he almost cried out in shock. This person was silent and sneaky, like a thief. His figure was tall, and his face was thin. It was the Misty Mansion's Holy Emperor, Bai Qifeng. Bai Qifeng's personality was one of seeking revenge for the smallest grievance. Although he managed to beat up Zhang Mubai by chance today, his anger was far from over. Then he was monitored by 2 Holy Emperors, although they might not be monitoring him, since they didn't say it explicitly. But this was how Bai Qifeng understood it. Especially when Holy Emperor Bai was certain that today's awkward situation was caused by these two fellows. So, this Holy Emperor Bai wanted to teach them a lesson. Before the meeting ended, Bai Qifeng found an excuse to slip out. Knowing that Hai Wuya and He Zhiqiu were eavesdropping next door, Bai Qifeng naturally wanted to go to a place with no one around. His target was the thing that Jun Dashao had already kept in the Hongjun Pagoda, He Zhiqiu's luggage. The room was not very big, and with a sweep of his eyes, he had already looked around. But he didn't find what he was looking for. Holy Emperor Bai was a little angry, muttering to himself, "Fuck, don't tell me I have to bring my luggage to eavesdrop next door? Isn't this He Zhiqiu a little too careful? Or maybe he didn't even bring his luggage over and left it at the Qin family." Muttering a few words, Holy Emperor Bai snorted and floated out silently. Chapter 855. Jun Moxie was dumbfounded. Is this still the behavior of the Holy Emperor? This is practically the behavior of a hoodlum, right? Bai Qifeng was still unwilling to give up, looking around. Jun Moxie's heart skipped a beat, and he snickered evilly. "I was just fretting about how to start a fight with inanimate objects. You've really come at the right time." Thinking about it, he used his right hand and silently flicked out a gust of wind. With a loud bang, it hit the bronze mirror in the room. Although the force behind it was not very strong, the sound it made was extremely loud and clear. Bai Qifeng was just bending down to look under the bed when he heard the strange sound. He quickly retreated, and without even looking, he turned around and tried to escape from the window. Just at this time, an eerie voice came from behind him. "You want to leave after pouring out a plate of trash? Bai Qifeng, is this all you've got? Could it be that the people in the Misty Mansion only have this many tricks up their sleeves?" Bai Qifeng was enraged. He turned around abruptly and hollered, "If I've poured it, then so be it." Only when he turned around did he realize that there was no one behind him. His back instantly broke out in cold sweat, drenching his clothes. He quickly turned around, wanting to escape, but it was already too late. With a loud bang, Hai Wuya and He Zhiqiu came in at the same time, one from the door and the other from the window. The two of them were just next door, focusing all their attention on the movements next door. Unexpectedly, they heard the commotion from the other side, and immediately rushed back in shock, blocking Bai Qifeng, who had already jumped to the window. In that instant, the three of them looked at each other, not knowing what to do. All of them were stunned. Bai Qifeng was shocked and embarrassed, while Hai Wuya and He Zhiqiu were in complete disbelief. The Holy Emperor was a thief? An indescribably strange smell instantly filled the room. It seemed like the sour stench beside the vat wasn't any better. He Zhiqiu's face was as dark as water, completely expressionless. But he was the first to move. He walked over step by step and abruptly tore open the blanket. Instantly, the soup and leftovers were all revealed. A complete chicken head rolled down with its eyes wide open, circling around Bai Qifeng's feet and looking up at the sky. Then, He Zhiqiu's gaze shifted and his expression changed again. The luggage he had placed at the head of the bed had disappeared without a trace. Turning around, he looked at Bai Qifeng and chuckled coldly. Good. What a good Holy Emperor of the White Emperor, he was indeed open and candid. The people of the misty illusory manor were all top-notch talents. Not only did they bring leftovers to entertain guests in the middle of the night, they were even very interested in his luggage and kept it for this old man. Bai Qifeng, nice to meet you, this old man thanks you so much. Bai Qifeng's face was completely red, his mouth agape and tongue-tied. His right hand was still holding onto the plate of food, and he actually forgot to put it down. Up until now, he still did not know why the bronze mirror on the wall would suddenly make a crisp sound when there was clearly no one in the room. And who was the person who spoke just now? He was feeling gloomy in his heart, so he wanted to play a prank to vent his anger. He might not have any evil intentions. But from the looks of the current situation, it was extremely terrible. The commotion here was not small, and Chao Guofeng and the rest had also ended their meeting. The 6 holy emperors all rushed over in an instant, and when they saw this scene, they were all dumbfounded. With Bai Qifeng's unparalleled skills, he was actually caught red-handed doing such a small trick? What was going on? And in this instant, the invisible Jun Moxie silently escaped. Of course, he did not have the intention to leave immediately. He only went to Hai Wuya's room, and with a whoosh, Hai Wuya's luggage also entered the Hongjun Pagoda. Then he silently returned, watching the show with great interest. With such a ready-made advantage, it would not be too much even if he did 10 or 8 secs every day. And there was also such a big show, the more the better. The performers were all experts of the Holy Emperor. It would be a pity if he did not watch it carefully. This instigator, the real thief, was actually the one who did it without anyone noticing. And all the blame was placed on the White Holy Emperor of the Misty Mansion. Jun Dashao's methods of making others a scapegoat had obviously increased greatly. Just like what he said, the White Holy Emperor next door was really in a terrible predicament. Holy Emperor Chao, shouldn't the Misty Mansion give me an explanation for tonight's matter? He Zhiqiu's face was as dark as still water as he said slowly. Cough cough cough. Qifeng, what exactly is going on? What are you doing? Chao Guofeng said sanctimoniously. What else can it be? It's just like this. Everything is in front of us. Is there still a need to say more? These 2 experts from the Holy Lands don't like us. Don't tell me this Bai is going to be bullied by them? At this point, Bai Qifeng was instead very stubborn. Anyway, it's just like this, you all saw it too. I did it, what can you do about it? Hai Wuya and He Qifeng's faces darkened at the same time. Bai Qifeng, everyone here is already so old, no one here is a young lad. You have to be responsible for what you did. As the Holy Emperor, one of the strongest experts in the world, you actually did such a senseless thing, and you actually don't feel ashamed. To be so rude and unreasonable? He Zhiqiu said solemnly. Ashamed? Unreasonable? Hi, He Zhiqiu, let me ask you, the 2 of you colluded with each other to spy on us, and even tried to eavesdrop on our conversation. Are you not ashamed? Bai Qifeng snorted and said, to deal with gentlemen, I will naturally use open and above-board methods. But to deal with the 2 of you, there's no need to say anything, right? Hai Wuya snorted coldly and said, Bai Qifeng, you better make things clear. Bai Qifeng shrugged and said, so what if I make things clear? So what if I don't make things clear? Do I have to make things clear just because you want me to? Who do you think you are? He Zhiqiu clasped his hands behind his back and said in a Lengling manner, we don't think that we are anyone, and we don't think that we are some big shots. But we ask ourselves, we still can't do such a despicable thing, much less throw a plate of leftovers into someone's bed. Bai Qifeng, Holy Emperor Bai, what do you think? Bai Qifeng's face turned purple as he shouted, He Zhiqiu, cut the crap, I've long since found you an eyesore, come? He Zhiqiu laughed disdainfully and said lightly, Holy Emperor Bai, if you want to fight, sure. But, shouldn't you return my weapon first? Don't tell me that this is how people in your Misty Mansion fight? Hiding other people's weapons first? Weapon? What weapon? Who took your weapon? Bai Qifeng was stunned, a bad feeling rising in his heart. You're really very shameless. He Zhiqiu laughed disdainfully. Is this how people in the Misty Mansion do things? Forget it, Bai Qifeng. This old man will take on your strange peaks rise 10,000 crags with my bare hands. As he spoke, he stretched out his hand, and with a whoosh, the hem of his robe fluttered without any wind, curling up in the air and tucking into his belt. Wait! Bai Qifeng roared. This old man dares to take responsibility for what I've done. It's true that I've dumped the leftovers from your bed, but this old man did not take any *T weapon of yours. We have to figure this out. He Zhiqiu was so angry that he laughed instead, a cold glint flashing in his eyes. Very good, you didn't take it. Do you think you didn't take it just because you said you didn't take it? There was no one in the room, my luggage was just placed at the head of the bed, and there was only Holy Emperor Bai here. Then my luggage and the weapon in it grew legs and ran away. This is what you mean, right? Holy Emperor Bai, this is what I think. Are you satisfied? How can I, Bai Chi Feng, be the kind of person who dares to take responsibility for what I've done? He Ji Qiu, don't slander me here. You placed the things in Hai Wu Ya's room, and then came back to frame me. You're so shameless. Bai Chi Feng's beard trembled, and he was so angry that he almost vomited blood. Since that's the case, come with me. He Ji Qiu's body floated over, and the group arrived at Hai Wu Ya's room. He Ji Qiu still had his hands behind his back, and he said calmly, "Did you see it clearly? Holy Emperor Bai, in this room, there's only Brother Hai's luggage and not mine. What else do you have to say?" He had just spoken up to hear when Hai Wu Ya suddenly exclaimed, "Where's my luggage? Why did my luggage also disappear?" Hai Wu Ya turned around abruptly, looking at Chao Guofeng and the few people from the Misty Mansion. He suddenly laughed coldly in extreme anger. "Holy Emperor Chao, it's really good to have more people, sending 1 or 2 people to do things, and it's actually so convenient. But, doesn't Holy Emperor Chao feel that doing this is really shameless?" Misty Mansion, as expected of the 2 words Misty Ta. Hai Wu Ya and the other person's faces were ashen. In the luggage, there were not only their personal weapons, but also the gift they had just received from Zhan Mubai. Now that the matter was not settled, the gift was gone. Wasn't this too despicable? Both of them were extremely furious. Chao Guofeng said angrily, "Hai Wu Ya, are you guys done yet? Bai Chi Feng only wanted to play a prank just now. We've all been friends for hundreds of years, what's the big deal? But you guys are actually so unforgiving, and actually dragged the whole Misty Mansion into this." He glared angrily. "Today, Hermitage Zhan Mubai framed us first, and Illusory Blood Sea and Supreme Golden City are unreasonable. Do you guys think that the people from the Misty Mansion are so easy to bully? There must be a limit to everything. Once you do too much, you'll only tire others and yourself out, and it'll be too late for regrets." Hai Wu Ya chuckled coldly and said, "I'm not clear about other things, but I know that Bai Chi Feng came in, and our things just happened to be missing. But the people from the Misty Mansion didn't lose anything, and you only know this. Isn't that enough?" As he said this, Chao Guofeng's heart suddenly skipped a beat. He turned his head and shouted, "Go check our luggage." The Holy Emperor expert at the back responded and left. Hai Wu Ya threw his head back and laughed loudly, looking very happy. "Chao Guofeng, you're really a good actor. Even at this time, you still haven't forgotten to act. Could it be that your luggage is also missing? A thief broke into the place where the 9 holy emperors live, and stole all the luggage of the 9 holy emperors. This is really shocking news." Chao Guofeng pursed his lips, not saying a word. Not long later, that expert returned and shook his head lightly at Chao Guofeng. His meaning was clear. The things from the Misty Mansion were not lost. Chao Guofeng's face darkened in an instant. In Chao Guofeng's heart, these 2 luggage should really have been taken by Bai Chi Feng. But Bai Chi Feng was his brother, and his relationship with the 3 Holy Lands was so tense now. How could he punish his own brother in front of the enemy? Not only did Chao Guofeng understand, even Hai Wu Ya and He Ji Qiu understood. The 2 holy emperors were so angry that their hair stood on end. "It was obviously you who took it, and now you're still pretending to check, and after checking, you still dare to say that it wasn't lost? Isn't this clearly toying with us? Brother Hai, Brother He, I'm afraid there's a misunderstanding here. No matter how willful Bai Chi Feng is, he definitely wouldn't have stolen your weapons. Perhaps the 2 of you should think again? Could it be that the 2 of you were afraid of being unsafe and left your luggage in the Chen residence?" The more Chao Guofeng thought about it, the more he felt that something was wrong. Ever since they came here, there seemed to be too many things happening, almost one after another, all of them so unimaginable and out of their expectations. All in all, even though the holy emperors were gathered here, they were still extremely passive. It was as if there was an invisible hand fiddling with all of this. Hai Wu Ya and He Ji Qiu looked at each other and laughed coldly at the same time. The 2 of them completely ignored Chao Guofeng's words. Their eyes were filled with rage and the desire to fight. Safe? Where in the world is there a safer place than beside the 2 of us? Do we have to leave our weapons far away as well? Your misty mansion has already done things to such an extent, and you still want to talk to us about some misunderstanding? Chao Guofeng, I used to think that you're a righteous and wise person, but from the looks of it now, your words are really not even worth a fart. At least a fart has a sound. Hai Wuya shook his head. There's no point in talking more, we can only fight. In the middle of a busy city, fighting will harm the innocent. Holy Emperor Chao, please. A lonely expression like autumn's cold appeared on He Zhiqiu's face. In an instant, the sky was high and the clouds were clear, and he flew out first. Let's fight then. Could it be that this old man is afraid of you? Bai Qi Feng hollered and followed behind, his speed as fast as lightning. This night, this Bai Holy Emperor was filled with injustice, grievance, and a thick sense of shame. He felt like he was about to explode. If he didn't vent it out a little, he might really suffer internal injuries from holding it in. Too shameful. The Holy Emperor of a generation had lowered his status and actually got caught in the act of stealing. Thinking of this, Bai Qi Feng's anger burned to the max. This was clearly a trap, and it was a trap that targeted my temper. Everything was linked to each other, forcefully pushing the sh*t onto this old man's head, forcing this old man to the precipice of being wrongly accused. Do they really think this old man is so easy to bully? Seeing the two of them storming out angrily, Hai Wuya snorted coldly and flicked his sleeves, following closely behind. Chao Guofeng let out a long sigh, and with a wave of his hand, the six of them turned into a streak of light and flew out. Chapter 856. The most satisfying thing was that these people were all Holy Emperor experts. At their level, they could only rely on their own strength to speak. Furthermore, everyone had a strong sense of subjectivity. As long as they had decided on something, then no matter how you explained it, it would be meaningless. From the Chen family to here, all the misunderstandings had not been cleared up. Thus, the higher the level, the harder it was to clear up a misunderstanding. This was the logic, because everyone's status was extremely high. Explaining was something only those with low strength would do. Strength was everything. The bigger the fist, the bigger the reason. Even if it was really a misunderstanding, under the watchful eyes of so many people, they couldn't bring themselves to lose face like this. Exciting? Satisfying? There's more exciting later. This show hasn't reached its climax yet, right? Jun Dashao moved and followed up soundlessly. If he didn't finish watching this show, Jun Moxie would definitely not be able to sleep. After all, he'd personally directed and led the show of the 3 Holy Lands and the Misty Mansion, and it had finally begun. That battle at the Chen family could only be said to be a warm-up. But now, as long as they fought, the level of the situation would be completely different. Because the leaders of the Misty Mansion and the 3 Holy Lands had all made their moves. The meaning was completely different. And this time, it was a conflict that was really hard to resolve. But the answer was simple. Regardless of the free and natural physique, or Hai Wuya and He Zhiqiu's weapons, they were all caused by Jun Moxie. As long as Jun Dashao didn't come out to turn himself in, then the victims of these cases would always be the scapegoat, and they would never be able to clear their names. And would Jun Dashao turn himself in? The answer was obvious. This fellow had gone through so many hardships and coincidences to obtain such a glorious result. How could he possibly destroy his own foundation? As a result, there were exactly 10 Saint Emperors involved, and everyone suffered a tragedy together. How many Holy Emperors were there in the world? Although he didn't know the exact number of people in the Misty Mansion, from the outside world, including Chao Guofeng and the others, there definitely wouldn't be more than 30. And all of them were old antiques. Now, this was a war that involved 10 Holy Emperors. It was like half the sky had collapsed. Moreover, regardless of whether or not there would be any real casualties in this battle, the originally shaky partnership between the 3 Holy Lands and the Misty Mansion would also be terminated. It would be announced that it would be completely dissolved, and there would be no possibility of it being re-established in the short term. From now on, the 3 Holy Lands would only be the 3 Holy Lands, and the Misty Mansion would only be the Misty Mansion. And this was the result that Jun Nemosia had been longing for even in his dreams. Otherwise, why would he spend so much effort to arrange all of this? For the sake of today, only God knew how many brain cells Jun Moxie had sacrificed. The relationship between the 3 Holy Lands and the Misty Mansion. When the envoy from the Misty Mansion had appeared in Blizzard Silver City, Jun Moxie had already seen through it. After all, these 4 families were all passed down from the same ancestor. Once they faced the outside world, they would definitely naturally join forces. And Jun Moxie had only offended the 3 Holy Lands, but he had yet to pose any real threat to the Misty Mansion. The 3 Holy Lands were easy to deal with, but the Misty Mansion was relatively more difficult. Because that place was too mysterious, as if it didn't belong to this space at all. Everyone knew of its existence, but other than the people in the Misty Mansion, no one else could enter. For thousands of years, no outsider had ever been able to enter the Misty Mansion. Unlike the 3 Holy Lands, who were unable to move outside. Jun Moxie going against the 3 Holy Lands was an inevitable result. If the 3 Holy Lands were to be in danger, the Misty Mansion would definitely intervene, regardless of whether they had sufficient reason or not. They would definitely not sit and watch the 3 Holy Lands perish. And this was what Jun Moxie was most afraid of. Without breaking the alliance between these 4 parties, he would not act rashly no matter what. Because if the alliance of these 4 parties was really serious, they would definitely have the ability to completely erase the Tian Fa forest from this world. With this kind of powerful strength, even the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters would be sealed away for hundreds of years, let alone the fledgling Jun Moxie. So, even though Jun Dashao was filled with hatred and resentment, he did not dare to jump out and become a target. He only dared to sneak attacks, and if it was not possible, he would escape and hide. He never dared to face them head-on. All for the sake of the Misty Mansion, his biggest taboo. With regards to the unknown, Jun Moxie had always been more cautious than anyone else. He had planned this chain of plans for a long time, but he never had the chance to execute it. This time, he finally got the chance. And it was a golden opportunity that only came once in a blue moon. If the alliance of these 4 parties did not have the Misty Mansion, Jun Dashao would really have nothing to worry about. He could even make use of it at a crucial moment. If he really could not win, he could just hide in the Tian Fa forest, and the 3 Holy Lands could only watch helplessly. What a pleasant thing it was. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. And when the enemy's friend becomes his enemy, he would be even more ruthless. Young Master Jun carried a carefree and complacent air as he flew forward in stealth mode. In fact, in a place where no one could see him, he even shook his buttocks, causing waves to roll down his buttocks. When he arrived at the side of the Lotus Pond 100 miles away from Chrysanthemum City, he saw that the 4 people were already fighting fiercely, and the battle was already in full swing. So intense. It's definitely more exciting than those blockbusters from my previous life. A real visual treat. Jun Dashao carefully chose a place with better feng shui and squatted down, breathing in the fresh night air deeply, feeling extremely satisfied. The 4 people in the middle of the battle were Bai Qifeng, He Jiqiu, Chao Guofeng, and Hai Wuya. The 4 of them were fighting barehanded, not using any weapons. Hai Wuya and He Jiqiu's luggage had been taken away by Jun Dashao, so they could not use it even if they wanted to. As for Bai Qifeng and Chao Guofeng, they were not willing to take advantage of them. One had to know that Chao Guofeng had already reached the 3rd level Holy Emperor realm, and his true strength was far above anyone here. Even if it was a one-on-one battle, it would be considered as bullying the weak. If he fought bare-handed with his weapon, that would really be too despicable. And the other 5 Holy Emperors from the Misty Mansion were watching the battle from the side, all of them eager to give it a try. Just from the current situation, Hai Wuya and He Jiqiu would probably not be able to avoid a tragic end tonight. Jun Dashao watched from the side with a clear conscience. He felt that this time, he would definitely be able to gain a huge advantage by sitting on the mountain and watching the tigers fight. 2 holy emperors against 7 holy emperors, and one of the holy emperors from the Misty Mansion's side was a 3rd-level holy emperor whose strength far surpassed theirs. With such a comparison of strength, there was basically no suspense at all, right? Of course, if the holy emperor wanted to escape wholeheartedly, then even if the 7 holy emperors from the Misty Mansion joined hands, they would not be able to stop a single one of them. But the problem now was that these 9 people had already gone mad with anger. They needed to vent. A ferocious vent. The battle became more and more intense, as if it would not stop until one side was dead. Right now, Jun Dushao was very happy in his heart. Damn it, when you guys finish venting, you'll realize that even if you don't die, you'll at least be covered in wounds, and your stamina will be greatly depleted. And of the 10 stops of inner chi, at least 95% will be gone. At that time, it will be the time for young master, this 3rd-level venerable, to show his might. Of course, if all 9 of them were exhausted at the same time, such a great thing, Jun Dushao only thought about it for a moment. He did not expect it to become a reality, because the difficulty of this matter was too high, and the requirements for Hai Wuya and He Ji were too high, and it was really unrealistic. A series of loud rumbling sounds could be heard one after another. Sand and pebbles were sent flying, and the sky was obscured. Jun Imosie was squatting on a tree not far away. It seemed as if he was watching a classic kung fu movie. He was grinning from ear to ear. The only fly in the ointment was that these fellows were fighting silently, and there was actually no sound of cursing. This made Jun Dushao feel like he was watching a pantomime, and this was perhaps the only fly in the ointment. This kind of thinking was pure nonsense. If a holy emperor expert were to fight and curse at the same time, would that still be the holy emperor? Although the cause of this battle, and the process of it all seemed rather nonsensical. Bam! A sound that was obviously emitted by 2 palms that were facing each other suddenly rang out. Following that, an abnormally sharp whistling sound seemed to ring out in the air. The intense strength chi instantly surged in all directions, like countless sharp arrows, suddenly shooting out in all directions. Following that, 2 muffled groans rang out at the same time. Bai Qi Feng and He Ji both retreated at the same time, but at the same time, they changed their direction from retreating to advancing. The intensity of the battle was about to rise again. And just at this moment, He Ji arrow-like body suddenly slowed down in the air. His arms and legs spread out at the same time, and his palms instantly clasped together, chanting slowly, "The autumn wind decides life and death, heaven and earth are boundless." In the instant that this sentence was said, the originally harmonious spring weather in the entire space changed in an instant. The originally gentle spring breeze seemed to have turned into a cold autumn wind filled with bleakness and sorrow in that instant. He Ji unique Xian Qi spread out in the air, reaching far and wide. As long as it spread out, the lush grass there would turn into a withered yellow the moment it came into contact with the Xian Qi. The nearby lush trees that had just regained their vitality, with their green leaves swaying in the wind, all turned into a withered yellow color as if the late autumn had suddenly arrived. Then, they gradually left the branches, falling one by one. When they first left the branches, there was still some green, but by the time they floated in the air, they had already turned into golden leaves dancing wildly. Looking at the yellow leaves dancing in the air, the ground was a patch of withered yellow, a desolate sight to behold. And in the air, amidst the falling yellow leaves, a figure in white robes and a figure in hemp robes were approaching each other with extreme speed. Looking at this strange scene, Jun Moxie actually felt a sense of transcendence and beauty. He couldn't help but think of a poem from the Tang dynasty in his heart. Shaking his head, he recited silently, "The endless falling trees rustle down, the endless Yangtze River rolls and rolls, truly beautiful to the point of bubbling." However, amidst this beauty, there was actually a thick and desolate killing intent, a desolate and continuous killing intent. 10,000ly sorrowful autumn. He Ji unique technique. Today is Mom's birthday, so she went home and came back quite late. Very sorry. There's also another matter. On the way, I received a call from the submoderator. saying that the group had suddenly disbanded for some reason gave me a fright. Chapter 857. The second chapter. I'm really trash to the extreme. 5 hours to write one chapter. My back is hurting. As the scenery around him changed, Hijichio's body also expanded rapidly like a balloon. His black hair danced in the air, and his lean face was filled with killing intent. Boundless colors of autumn. Jun Emosie immediately understood. Hijichio's 10,000 miles of sorrowful autumn wasn't just a superhuman emotional influence. He could also extract the vitality of all the green plants for his own use when he activated the 10,000 miles of sorrowful autumn. This was equivalent to being able to replenish his Xian Qi at any time. In this way, he would naturally be undefeatable forever. But his opponent did not have this kind of advantage. Even if their strengths were equal, under such circumstances, the victor was naturally clear. Or rather, the longer the battle dragged on, the greater the advantage Hijichio had. Bai Qifeng's white robes fluttered in the wind as he shouted, "Brilliant! Wondrous! What a good 10,000-li sorrowful autumn! Look at my 10,000-li craggy mountains!" His palms danced rapidly, and in an instant, Bai Qifeng's body disappeared into a gust of wind, as if he had completely disappeared. Instead, the ground suddenly became uneven, and small man-made hills rose from the ground. Every single one of them was sharp and steep, like a cliff. At the same time, countless huge rocks fell from the sky with a loud rumble. 10,000-li autumn scenery is boundless. How can it be covered by a mere mountain? Overestimating your own abilities. Hijichio laughed coldly. The autumn wind howled, and the boundless heaven and earth were filled with desolation. Although Bai Qifeng had also activated his unique Xian skill and activated the unique energy of heaven and earth that he had comprehended, causing a huge change, but in this battle, he was clearly at a disadvantage. Hijichio, who had activated the 10,000-li autumn, clearly had the upper hand. Using the unique attribute of his unique skill, he was truly boundless. In the instant that the two of them clashed, they disappeared into the strange scenery that suddenly appeared. But the autumn colors were boundless, covering the sky and covering the earth. Bai Qifeng's craggy ravines were already at a disadvantage, and he was only barely holding on. This point, not only was Bai Qifeng clear, even the Holy Emperor beside him could see it clearly. There were still the 5 great Holy Emperors of the Misty Mansion here. As long as any one of them made a move, they could easily turn the tables on Bai Qifeng. Even defeating him would only be a matter of a few moves. But the battle between the Holy Emperors involved the reputation and prestige of each party. No matter what, as long as someone interfered, both parties would not accept it. Especially the disadvantaged side, they would rather die in battle. In the current situation, although Bai Qifeng was at a disadvantage, he was still far from being defeated. But if he wanted to turn the situation around, the only one who could intervene was Chao Guofeng, who was also in the battle. No one else could. As expected, Chao Guofeng let out a long roar, his voice shaking the skies. He, who had always been experienced and steady, had not used his full strength in the exchange just now. Although the alliance between the misty illusory manor and the 3 holy lands had collapsed because of today's matter, but the relationship between the two sides had not reached the level of being enemies. So Chao Guofeng was able to create a situation where they were evenly matched in terms of strength. Otherwise, with his strength as a 3rd-level Saint Emperor, even if he might not be able to defeat Hai Wuya immediately, he would undoubtedly have the upper hand. But at this moment, Bai Qifeng was completely suppressed by Hijichio, and it was hard for him to turn the tables. And Hijichio hated Bai Qifeng to the core, and as long as there was a chance, he would definitely not allow Bai Qifeng to live. It could be said that although Chao Guofeng and Hai Wuya were having a leisurely battle, it was a true battle of life and death between Bai Qifeng and Hijichio. Life and death were decided by a hair's breadth. Chao Guofeng was forced into a corner, afraid that something would happen to Bai Qifeng, so he could only use his true strength. because only by defeating Hai Wuya as soon as possible could he save Bai Qi Feng from his predicament. Just as Chao Guofeng unleashed his full strength, the battle situation underwent a shocking change because of this eruption of strength from Chao Guofeng. It could be said that it was a fundamental change. This was no longer a battle of wills, but a true battle of life and death. A battle of life and death between the Misty Mansion and the Holy Lands. "Brother Hai, pardon me." Chao Guofeng let out a long roar, and the wind and clouds changed color. Then his body turned, and the entire sky was filled with Chao Guofeng's silhouettes. And an unprecedented pressure as heavy as a mountain made it difficult for Hai Wuya to even move his body. However, at this moment, Hai Wuya also let out a long howl, exploding forth with his strongest profound energy, breaking free of his bindings. On the other side, He Zhiqiu, who had the upper hand, suddenly let out a loud laugh. The two of them suddenly flashed, and in an instant, they actually converged together. Hai Wuya laughed mockingly. "The Misty Mansion, as expected, wants to put the two of us to death. Chao Guofeng, you finally made clear the stance of the Misty Mansion. The two of us will not accompany you anymore. Those few weapons and other things, I'll leave them for you to play with. The mountains are high and the rivers are long, we'll meet again one day." Amidst the long laughter, the two figures flashed a few times like phantoms, then disappeared. At the same time, the lotus pond that had been abandoned for a long time at the side of the battlefield suddenly rolled up with a loud boom, turning the entire place upside down. The endless amount of mud that had accumulated for hundreds of years was like a huge umbrella, covering the space within a radius of 1,000 zhang. Thick and dense, it pressed down like a dark cloud. All the people within this area were facing the danger of being covered by the mud. Hai Wuya and He Zhiqiu laughed coldly at the same time, then there was no more sound. Obviously, after the two of them launched this disgusting final attack, they used it as a cover and quickly retreated from this area. These two were old monsters that had lived for hundreds of years. How could they be swayed by their emotions and fight a battle that they had no chance of winning? This matter was still considered a test of the attitude of the Misty Mansion towards the Holy Lands. If Chao Guofeng and Bai Qi Feng really killed them, then it would really confirm the wild ambitions of the Misty Mansion. At that time, the two of them would break out of the encirclement at all costs. In fact, the two of them, who were experienced and farsighted, had already prepared such a path of retreat when they chose this battlefield from the start. Old Ginger was still spicier. In terms of scheming, the Misty Mansion that had secluded itself from the world for so long was much worse. And while they were determined to break out of the encirclement, the people of the Misty Mansion did not have the intention to kill them all. Even Bai Qi Feng only wanted to teach He Zhiqiu a lesson, and did not have the intention to kill him. But their sudden departure, the battle ended, and the instant they reported it, caused the misunderstanding between the three Holy Lands and the Misty Mansion to be irreconcilable. With the departure of the two of them, the relationship between the four factions was completely severed. Jun Dashao, who was also in the area covered by the mud, was instantly dumbfounded by this sudden change of events, and he cursed in his heart. Chao Guofeng and the rest all had extremely profound Xian cultivation to protect themselves, and even had the time to use their movement techniques to dodge. Naturally, they did not have to worry about anything, and would definitely not be touched by the mud. But Jun Dashao's side could not do so. He was currently in the yin-yang escape, watching the show, waiting for a situation where both sides were injured, and then he would find a chance to take advantage of it. With this rain of mud, if he used the art of unlocking heaven's fortune to protect himself, no matter how careful he was, Chao Guofeng and the rest would still discover his existence under the influence of the aura. Then, his plan would be in danger of failing on the verge of success, and his own safety would also be in danger. This was the joint attack of the 7 holy emperors. Even the 9 serenities and 14 masters might not be able to deal with it, so he could only choose to endure it. Feeling the extremely smelly mud splattering on his body, Jun Moxie almost retched. This kind of mud that had accumulated for hundreds of years, especially when it was originally a lotus pond, there were lotus roots that had rotted for God knows how many generations, and there were even some rotting corpses inside. That stench, it was easy to imagine. Even with Jun Moxie's temperament, as a former assassin who had already experienced too much filth and unforeseen events, it was still difficult for him to bear. Young Master Jun hadn't even had the time to wake up from his wonderful dream of being in control of everything when he encountered this. But he didn't dare to move. He didn't even dare to move, and could only allow this stinky mud to cover his entire body. He wanted to cry, but no tears came out. My grand plan? It's all gone. Dreams were always beautiful, but when the beautiful dream was gone, reality was often very cruel and tragic. After who knew how long, when Jun Dashao opened his eyes again, he found that the scene was already empty. Hai Wuya and He Jiqiu had disappeared without a trace, and Chao Guofeng and the rest were also nowhere to be seen. This was very reasonable. Chao Guofeng and the rest of the 7 holy emperors were originally all people who lived like princes. He Jiqiu and Hai Wuya had already left. How could they still stay here and smell the filth? Fortunately, Jun Dashao's yin-yang escape art was destroyed by this unexpected mud. If they stayed for a moment longer, Jun Dashao would really be in a tragic state. In the silence of the night, only young Master Jun was covered in mud as he squatted on a tree, looking like a mud monkey. How could it be like this? How unlucky! Not only did I lose the chance to beat a drowning dog, but I've also become a mud monkey. How could a perfect plan turn out like this? What is this? Jun Dashao looked up to the sky and sighed. Other than sowing discord, it seemed like he would not have any other gains. Extremely depressed, he jumped down from the tree and circulated his qi to shake off the mud on his body. However, the stench still lingered for 3 days. Jun Moxie cursed as he flew, searching for a river. No matter what, he had to take a good bath. It's really too smelly. The filth that came out from my body when I was cleansing my muscles and marrow can't even compare to 1/10,000th of this smell. In this life, Jun Dashao's life had always been smooth sailing. This was the first time he had encountered such a terrible situation. After running for a full 40 to 50 miles, he finally saw a sparkling light in front of him. A clear river flowed forward happily with a splashing sound. The river was not deep, only reaching up to his knees. It was more appropriate to call it a small river or a small stream. Without any hesitation, young Master Jun leaped into the river like a fish and dove in. With a boom, he created a huge pit that was 3 to 5 feet deep at the bottom of the river. All the clear river water flowed into this newly formed pit. Young Master Jun quickly stripped himself naked. Then, he dipped his head into the water and washed himself with all his might. But the moment he stuck his head out of the water, he could still smell that unbearable stench in his nostrils. After washing himself a few times, he finally felt that it was almost done. The smell seemed to have become much fresher. Jun Moxie lay naked in the newly created large bath. He took a few more breaths and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Not only could that set of clothes not be worn, it was even more unbearable. That smell was really, with a thought, Jun Moxie took out another set of clothes from the Hongjun Pagoda. Only when he saw the clothes did he suddenly remember. Why am I so stupid? The 9 Nether First Young Master's inheritance, the warm jade core silk, haven't been distributed yet. Ever since he returned, things had simply become a chain. He had actually forgotten about this important matter. If he had distributed the treasured clothes earlier, perhaps Snake King wouldn't have. So, my brain must have gone haywire. However, if those treasured clothes had been distributed at that time, would the Snake King have had a share of them? Thinking of this, Jun Moxie suddenly felt a deep sense of guilt in his heart. After blaming himself for a while, Jun Moxie walked to the shore naked and bathed in the moonlight. He slowly put on his clothes. As he put on his clothes, he thought about his next step. Just as he was halfway dressed, he suddenly heard a faint voice. "You are Jun Moxie?" This voice seemed to be the voice of a woman. The voice was unusually indifferent, but he couldn't tell the age of the person. Who? Jun Moxie was surprised to hear this voice. His body didn't move, and he didn't show any signs of abnormality. He continued to put on his clothes at the same speed and asked without raising his head. This was his true reflection. As the king of assassins, the most important thing was to remain calm in the face of danger. No matter what happened, he must not be disturbed. The more unexpected the situation, the more he must not panic. Otherwise, the consequences would only be worse. On a tree by the river, a light snort could be heard. June Moxie looked up and saw the elegant figure of a woman standing on the treetop. Her slender figure was graceful, and a sword hilt could be seen on her slender shoulders. She stood on the highest leaf of the treetop, her body moving up and down lightly. She was like a fairy from the jade pool, riding the wind but unwilling to step into the mortal world and be tainted by the mortal world. So she stayed on the treetop. Chapter 858. Because this woman's entire body was in a state of complete stillness. Seeing that June Moxie was looking at her, the woman raised her face to look at the crescent moon in the sky, as if she was talking to herself. Yes, apart from June Moxie, I'm afraid there's no other prodigy in this world. Reaching the 3rd level of the Great Master Realm at the age of 18. It's really shocking and amazing. May I ask who this young lady is? How do you know this June? June Moxie smiled lightly, sat down on the ground, and asked in a leisurely manner. But he had already made preparations in secret, so that he would immediately escape into the Hongjun Pagoda if there were any signs of trouble. Only safety was the real priority. Young lady? The woman chuckled softly, but her voice seemed to contain an indescribable desolation. Her dress fluttered in the wind, dancing in the air. Under the moonlight, her slender waist appeared even more pitiful, as if a slightly stronger gust of wind would be able to snap her slender waist. Her voice was still indifferent, and there was no emotion in it. Just now, the conflict between the Golden City of Blood and the 9 experts of the Misty Mansion was actually provoked by you? Young lady, you really know how to joke. How could I possibly have the ability to make the 9 holy emperors turn against each other? June Moxie's expression did not change, but he chuckled and shook his head, as if what the other party had said was very funny and ridiculous. But June Moxie's heart was filled with shock. Who is this woman? Why would she say such a thing? Could it be, perhaps you don't know who I am? The woman Lenglang laughed, her back still facing June Moxie, and said lightly, 800 years ago, someone called me the all-seeing Rakshasa. During the war for seizing the heavens, the concealment techniques of the strange races were useless in front of me. No one was an exception. Their concealment trick has instead become a method for me to kill them effortlessly. June Moxie suddenly broke out in a cold sweat, but it wasn't because of the person in front of him, it was because 800 years ago. My great-grandmother, the woman in front of him, who had a graceful figure like a young girl, was actually an old monster who had lived for so many years? Even calling her great-grandmother was not enough. At the very least, she had to be the great-grandmother of her great-grandmother. If she had participated in the war for seizing the heavens 800 years ago, wouldn't that mean that she would at least have the skills of a venerable at that time? In other words, 800 years ago, she should be 180 years old? June Moxie groaned in his heart. Was this the so-called 1,000-year-old Banshee? 300 years ago, during the war for seizing the heavens, 15 supremacy enduring heavens of the strange races died under my hands. The result of this battle directly led to the defeat of the strange races. She chuckled lightly and said mockingly, the so-called concealment techniques of the world are all worthless in front of me. Do you think that your petty tricks can really escape my eyes? June Moxie, now you should understand how laughable your denial was. Miss, you are really great. You are really the greatest hero of the human race. I will definitely set up a long life memorial tablet for you when I return. I pray day and night and wish you longevity. But I really didn't do it. I don't even know what happened. You can't accuse me like this, ah? How could June Moxie admit that this was related to his grand plan? Besides, you said that you've lived for over 1,000 years, so you've lived for over 1,000 years? I can even say that I'm the 9 Nether First Young Master, Would you believe me? No one has ever seen through the yin-yang escape technique since it first appeared. What right do you have to say that you can see through it? Show me the evidence first. So, Jun Dashao denied flatly. This young master only took a bath just now. Is that wrong? Miss, could it be that I've committed a crime by taking a bath? You really have a sharp tongue. Jun Moxie, I've always heard that although you're extreme in your actions, you're still a man who dares to take responsibility for what you've done. But I'm greatly disappointed to see you today. You're just a coward who dares to take responsibility for what you've done. There was a tinge of disappointment in the lady's indifferent tone, and her voice also became a little desolate. Miss, you're wrong. If it was really done by me, this young master will never avoid it. But if it wasn't done by me, no one can pin the blame on me. Jun Moxie revealed a wronged expression. I can't possibly have to admit to the bad things just because I've done them. What kind of logic is this? Don't you agree, miss? Jun Moxie, you still don't dare to admit to what you've done. Are you still a man? The lady kept silent for a while and said sarcastically. Speaking of this young master is even more speechless. Miss, I wasn't wearing anything when I took a bath just now. Whether I'm a man or not, do I still need to say it myself? Didn't you see such a big one? Do women have that thing? Jun Moxie chuckled and continued to act shamelessly. Since you're a 1,000-year-old demoness, this young master will play the small with you. What about it? Shameless. The lady's body trembled. She was so angry that her voice became sharp. Miss, we're not familiar with each other at all. You're even more shameless by framing others like this. Jun Moxie was not moved at all. He thought to himself, dealing with those shameless people from the 3 Holy Lands, if this young master was really a gentleman, I'm afraid that even my bones would have turned into ashes by now. The lady's figure flashed, and she suddenly floated up from the leaf. Then, like a weightless piece of cotton, she slowly floated down. When her 2 feet finally touched the ground, the entire process took almost a quarter of an hour. Moreover, during this period of time, she had been hovering in the air the whole time. Her movements could be said to be extremely slow. Jun Moxie's eyes narrowed. For the first time, he slightly believed what the lady had said. Just this shocking ability to hover in the air was not something that an expert of the Holy Emperor could do. Of course, the Holy Emperor could hover in the air for a period of time. He could also easily fly over 100 feet. But to slowly fall from the air and still be able to speak while hovering in the air was absolutely impossible. One had to know that hovering in the air depended on a single breath. Once he opened his mouth to speak, that breath would be released. How could he still maintain it? But this lady had done it, and she had done it so easily. The moment she landed, Jun Moxie finally saw her face clearly. This made the suspicion in Jun Moxie's heart increase by a few notches. Because in front of him was obviously a beautiful lady in her 20s. She had peerless elegance. Her phoenix-like eyes were filled with power. Her jade-like nose was straight, and her cherry lips were small. Her face was fair and tender. Her hair was full of fine black. It was extremely difficult to find a single strand of white hair on her head. It was practically comparable to the beautiful hair of Dugu Xiaoi. She was just standing there, but she naturally exuded a noble demeanor. It was as if she was a bright moon high up in the sky, and wouldn't allow anyone to blaspheme her. However, there was a faint blush and embarrassment on her face. It seemed that she was very embarrassed when she saw Jun Moxie bathing. And it was her embarrassment that greatly increased the suspicion in Jun Moxie's heart. How could a 1,000-year-old monster have such a tender face? But when she landed, Jun Moxie's body lightly shifted back a corresponding distance. He maintained a distance of 20 feet away from her. This was a relatively safe distance. At such a distance, as long as Jun Moxie was vigilant, it would be absolutely impossible for anyone to attack him. Because at such a distance, he could ensure that he would be able to escape into the Hongjun Pagoda at the first instance before any attack could be launched. This lady's appearance was indeed very beautiful. But to Jun Moxie, it was completely indifferent. In fact, he even had the thought of avoiding her. He couldn't settle the debt of love in his own home. If he were to get into another debt of love outside, that would be purely looking for trouble for himself. From the expressions of the ladies, June Moxie could clearly see that, although this world was a male-dominated world where one could have multiple wives and concubines, his few female confidants, whether it was Guan Qinghan, Du Guxiaoyi, or Mei Xuan, were all extremely possessive and jealous. None of these women would say it on the surface, but in their hearts, they might not really not care about it. It was just that it was not convenient for them to show it in certain situations. In addition, these few relationships all had their own reasons for not abandoning each other. That was why they barely got along with each other, and even accepted each other as they continued to get along with each other. Even so, June Moxie only had sex with Guan Qinghan when he was under the influence of an aphrodisiac. After that, all of them kept a close eye on him. They did not give June Dashao any chance to show off at all. As the saying goes, 1 monk carries water to drink, 2 monks carry water to drink, 3 monks have no water to drink. June Dashao was now in the awkward situation of having no water to drink, because there were too many monks in the house. Most people only had 1 tigress in their house, but June Dashao had a few in his backyard, and they were all extremely fierce super tigresses. At this time, if June Moxie were to bring back another tigress, it was foreseeable that a war in the harem would be inevitable. So when he saw this beautiful woman, young Master June did not think about the other party's age or seniority. His first thought was, "You must not fall in love with me. If there's anything you like about me, you must tell me. I will definitely change." You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.